Harry Potter. Sacrifice of all things. Chapter 1. Well, where is this? Shouldn't I be dead? Why don't I feel like that? Li Qian felt the sensations coming from his body and thought uncertainly. Although his skin felt a slight tingling and felt very uncomfortable. But at least he was sure that he was not dead. Moreover, the current situation did not seem to be in a hospital. When he tried to open his eyes, he saw a white ceiling. And it seemed that someone had discovered that he had woken up and stretched his head over, as if to observe his condition. But soon, Li Qian felt something was wrong, because the two people who appeared in succession were not yellow people, but white people, although this race is already very common in the country at this stage. But it is impossible for them to appear here. Li Qian's mind was a little confused, and he couldn't figure out why this happened. Could it be that the hospital he was in was a foreign-funded hospital? Otherwise, the doctors and nurses here would be foreigners. But soon, he realized something was wrong. Because, he had already seen his arms, which were very small, and the skin was slightly wrinkled, just like the feeling of just coming out of the water after a long time. At the same time, a very harsh conversation also reached his ears. Congratulations, Mr. Longbottom, mother and child are safe, and the child is very healthy. First a female voice came. Then, another male voice came to Li Qian's ears. Yes, I have to thank you very much. Come and see, Annie, dear, come and see our son, he is so healthy, look at his eyes, they are blue, just like the color of the sky, very smart. This time, the person who spoke was the white man who put his head in front of Li Qian. And soon, Li Qian was handed over to another person. This was a white woman, his face was a little pale at this time, there was a trace of sweat on his forehead, and his lips were a little white and cracked. Yes, dear, this is our child, so cute. The woman looked very happy and looked at Li Qian. As a college student, Li Qian only passed the CET4, but he could still understand these daily conversations and naturally understand his current situation. Obviously, he traveled through time and space to a Western country. But without more information, he didn't know where he was now, or whether he was still in the original world. Although he had a bad life in his previous life, he was also an undergraduate with the support of the country. Although he had just graduated, he died because of an accident. However, that was the place where he had lived for more than 20 years. He was just about to make a name for himself, but he had to start from scratch, which made him a little overwhelmed. As Li Qian kept thinking, his eyelids gradually became heavy and closed. Obviously, the brain that had just been born and had not yet fully developed could not support him thinking too much. In this way, Li Qian became a new member of this family. In the following month, Li Qian had gradually become familiar with this world. Through the chats with people around him, he also knew where the world he was in now was. The world he was in now was the world of a novel in the original world, which was the Harry Potter series of novels. Li Qian had not read much of this novel, but he had watched a few episodes of the movie adapted from this novel. The one who moved him the most was undoubtedly the heroine Hermione Granger. Not only was she very beautiful, but she was also very knowledgeable, and could be said to be a very outstanding woman. Such a beautiful and intellectual woman was a great temptation for any man. Of course, Li Qian didn't have the mind to think about these things now. After all, he was only 1 month old now. Time is always a magical thing. It will slip away from you unconsciously without you noticing it. Before he knew it, Li Qian, no, now he should be called Turnus Longbottom was already 5 years old. During these 5 years, Turnus has gained a very deep understanding of the English language through continuous learning. Moreover, during these 5 years, he has gradually come into contact with some things in the magic world. Whether it is the very magical daily necessities at home or the magic wands of his parents, he has come into contact with them. He has also read some books about magic, and Turnus still has some understanding of the magic world. However, he has not lived so comfortably in these 5 years. Of course, it is not like this for 5 years, that is, the first 2 or 3 years. Turnus, who knows some of the situation in Harry's world, will naturally not forget that there is a very terrifying existence in this world, and at the same time, there is a group of very dangerous people under his command. This person and his men are Voldemort and his followers, the Death Eaters, who have disturbed the entire magic world in the past few years. When Turners was just born, he didn't feel anything. After all, he didn't know the current time point at that time. However, when he saw that one of his elders had a big belly, he was obviously pregnant and was about to give birth. These are not the main points. The main point is that her name is Alice, and her husband is Frank. The couple may not be famous, but their son is not that simple. Their son's name is Neville Longbottom. Of course, Turnus, who was not Harry, did not pay attention to these at first. Until the couple visited him and his mother and revealed that they had named their children. When the boy was named Neville, if Turnus still didn't react at this time, he would be really stupid. He spent 2 years in fear until he got the news from the conversation of his family that his uncle and aunt were tortured crazy by the Death Eaters, and he finally breathed a sigh of relief. This is not because Turns is cold-blooded, but because he really doesn't know how to tell his parents. After all, he is just a 2-year-old child and can't do anything. Moreover, he doesn't know the specific time and place. Even if he wants to tell, he can't tell. It wasn't until a few days later that his parents brought Neville to their home and raised him, and then he knew all this. The specific course of events was partly heard from his parents' conversation, and some came from speculation. Since then, Turns has had a playmate, a silly little fool, Neville. 3 years later, Turns, his parents, grandmother and little fool Neville, lived together in the ancestral home of the Longbottom family. This is a very old house. From the outside, it is just an ordinary 2-story villa. In Britain at this time, such a house is not very surprising. However, don't underestimate this house. Inside this house, there is a very large space. This has to mention the special existence of this world, magic. With magic, although this house looks ordinary, the interior has been expanded by magic and traceless extension spell. The Longbottom family still has a lot of industry, and with the accumulation of their ancestors, their family life is very rich. Although it is not as big as Malfoy Manor, it is not small. After 5 years of life, the relationship between Turnus and Neville is undoubtedly very close, and the entire Longbottom family sympathizes with Neville because of his childhood experience. Perhaps because of the existence of Turnus, Algy, Turnus's father, put the burden on him, and Neville was not as harsh as in the original plot. And Turnus is also very competitive. Whether it is learning languages or memorizing magic history, he is very powerful. Although he can't remember everything at a glance, he is not far away. This also makes the family have a very good progress in Turnus' preschool education. Of course, the opposite is naturally Neville's stupidity. However, now that Turnus exists, everyone is not too critical of Neville, but rather lets him go and lets him develop. After all, Neville's brain is indeed a little bit off because of the forgetfulness spell, and there is nothing that can be done about it, and it is not Neville's fault. More importantly, with Turnus as a playmate, Neville himself works very hard, although most of the time he works in vain, but everyone still sees Neville's efforts. This also makes everyone feel more pity and love for Neville. Although Turnus has not had a deep understanding of the novel Harry Potter, he still knows the general plot and knows that Neville is a very important supporting role in Harry. Since he can become a supporting role, it goes without saying that he must have his own talents, and he never underestimates Neville. When playing with Neville, it should be said that when taking care of the child Neville, he would observe him intentionally or unintentionally. Of course, now they are just 2 children, and they can't get anything, and they don't get much information. That day, Turnus took Neville and the 2 of them to a locked room in the Longbottom ancestral home. This room has always been closed, and the family never let them come here. Turnus is curious about the magical world and always wants to explore this ancestral home. And this time their goal is here, they want to see what is in it. Turnus, is this not good? Grandma doesn't let us come here. Neville shrank back and said hesitantly. Looking at Neville like this, Turnus didn't care much. Since it was something that could be placed in the ancestral house, although it was tightly sealed, it was definitely not something dangerous. At most, it was some very valuable or powerful magic props. They just took a look, and it wouldn't be a big deal. Okay, Neville, don't worry. There won't be any danger here. We will just go and take a look. Nothing will happen. Even if there is any problem, you can just say that I asked you to come. Turnus said indifferently. Neville opened his mouth and wanted to persuade him again, but Turnus had turned his head away at this time, thinking about how to open the mountain gate, and didn't notice it. Seeing this, Neville didn't say anything more. From childhood to adulthood, he always obeyed Turnus's words and never disobeyed. Now that Turnus has made up his mind, he won't say anything more. At worst, if something happens, they will be punished together. Just when Neville was worried, Turnus had a big trouble. I don't know what happened to this door, it can't be opened at all, and what's more strange is that this door doesn't have any keyholes, and it doesn't look like a locked door. Looking at this situation, Turnus had a headache for a while. How can it be opened? This adventure, but he planned it as usual. If he can't enter the door this time, it will be embarrassing. Just when Turnus was thinking hard about how to open the door in front of him, he didn't realize that an unknown wave, with him as the center, began to spread to the surroundings. And as Turnus kept thinking, such waves became stronger and stronger. Until a certain moment, this special wave finally broke out. I saw a magical force generated in front of Turnus, and then under the traction of his special power, this force surged towards the door in front of Turnus. There was only a very slight sound rang in Turnus' ears, and then a magical scene appeared. The door in front of him opened out of thin air, and without any external force, it was opened in front of him. Although the sound was very slight, it also made Turnus feel something. He looked up at the door in front of him without knowing why. Turnus was very surprised to see the door open. Neville, how did this door open? Did you see it? Turnus couldn't help but throw the question to Neville, wanting to get the answer from him. Neville was also confused at this time. He did see it. He saw the moment when the door opened. But to be honest, Neville didn't know how the door opened, because when the door opened, there was no sign. It just opened suddenly. Neville said timidly, "Cousin, I don't know either. It just opened suddenly. I didn't see what happened." Looking at Neville's confused expression, Turnus knew that he couldn't ask anything from him, so he stopped struggling and pushed open the door that had already been opened. Turnus was in front and Neville was behind. They walked into the room carefully. At the beginning, because they suddenly came from a bright place to a dark environment, their eyes had not yet adapted, so they were also in the dark and could not see anything. However, after their eyes gradually adapted to the dark environment here, and then the light shining in from the door, they could see the layout of the room clearly. It was a very spacious room, and there was nothing special in the room. Most of them were bookshelves with many books on them. Judging from the marks on the bookshelves, the books here should be magic books, and they are all very rare and solitary. Many books have traces of time on them, and they look very old. The books here are full of 3 huge bookshelves. Just a rough estimate, there are at least thousands of books here. Finally, Turnus understood that this should be the foundation for the Longbottom family to become the 28 pure blood clans. The books here are rare and very precious books in the outside world. The knowledge recorded here is all the work of the ancestors of the Longbottom family. After hundreds and thousands of years of collection, it has finally reached such a scale. These books can be said to be related to the inheritance of the Longbottom family. Of course, the things here are not just the thousands of books on the 3 bookshelves, but also many other things. Some separate display shelves have some things that Turnus doesn't know, but can feel very unusual. I think these should be some collections of the Longbottom family. Some may be precious and valuable collections, and some are very precious and powerful magic items. This house can be said to be the root of the Longbottom family. No wonder their elders didn't let them get close to here at will. After all, the existence of this place can be regarded as the lifeblood of the Longbottom family. Looking at the layout and environment around him, Turnus was a little excited. In the past few years, although he had also come into contact with the knowledge and products of the magic world, they were only some very basic things, not too profound. Now that he finally saw these things, how could Turnus not be excited? Turnus couldn't help but walk a few steps into the room, wanting to take a closer look at the collection here. But there was no light in this room, and before, it was only because of the light cast from the door that they could vaguely see the layout here. Now after walking into the room, the light coming out of the door was obviously not enough. This made Turnus, who wanted to take a closer look at the situation here, very uncomfortable, and it would be better if there was light. It was this thought of his that made him discover a very magical scene. After Turnus had a thought, a milky white ball of light appeared out of thin air in front of him, just like that, quietly floating in front of him. This sudden scene shocked Turnus, whose inner soul was already in his 20s. He couldn't help but step back a few steps in shock, and finally calm down. Of course, he was able to calm down so quickly because he suddenly remembered that this was Harry Potter's world, a world with magic. So, there was nothing surprising about the current scene. On the contrary, after discovering that he could make his wish come true, he suddenly remembered that this was what the wizards in this world called a magic riot. Obviously, the reason why he was able to enter this room before was because of his magic riot. Unknowingly, his mental power, under the guidance of his thoughts, mobilized magic to help him open the closed door. And now, it is the same. Under the action of his mental power, magic formed a ball of light in front of him to help him illuminate. Looking at this magical scene in front of him, Turnus couldn't help but reach out to the small ball of light in front of him. When the hand touched the light ball, there was no substantial touch, just like a ball of air, without substance and temperature. After carefully observing the small light ball, Turnus began to try to control the small light ball and let it move as he wanted. Just as Turnus thought, the small light ball was very disobedient at the beginning. However, after gradually mastering the trick, it began to move gradually. Turnus also found that the small light ball was not moving because of the movement of his hand, but according to his own ideas, and then moved along with his ideas. After mastering this trick, Turnus began to control the small light ball and move it to where he wanted. Moreover, after getting familiar with this feeling, Turnus could not only control its movement, but also the size and brightness of the light ball. This is undoubtedly very magical, even Turnus is immersed in it. It was not until a crisp cough sounded behind him that Turnus came back to his senses. He looked behind him carefully with a guilty conscience. At this time, his father in this world, Algae, was standing at the door of this room, looking at himself in the room with a ruddy face. Although Algae was pretending to be calm and trying his best to maintain his dignity as a father. However, Turnus could see from his slightly trembling hands and unnatural facial expressions that Algae was not as calm as he showed. Looking at his strong and calm father, Turnus quickly pretended to be well behaved and ran to Algae. Although he felt a little disgusted, Turnus was still very sensible and pretended to be very innocent. He stretched out his right hand and showed the light ball in his hand to Algae. "Look, father, am I very powerful? This light ball is made by me," Turnus said, pretending to be very proud, with an expression on his face that said, "Praise me quickly." There is no way. In the past 5 years, Algae made Turnus deeply realize that a very unreliable and powerful father can do things without scruples. Looking back to the past, when he was 4 years old, he and Neville almost caused a crisis when they wanted to explore a magic prop that visited their home. At that time, Algae blew them into 2 balloons and tied them to the roof of their house. For 2 whole hours, God knows how they spent these 2 hours. Whenever the wind blows, the 2 of them can't help but follow the wind and sway in the air. Turnus was really afraid that if the magic failed, he and Neville would be smashed into a meat paste. Or if the rope broke, he and Neville would be blown away by the wind. Such things have happened a lot since he was 3 years old, and these are all bitter tears. So, after going through one lesson after another, he understood that when facing Algae, his father alone, he had better act innocent. Even if this makes him feel a little nauseous, it is better than being worried. After trying his best to restrain himself, Algae finally couldn't help it and suddenly picked up Turnus from the ground. Looking at the small ball of light in his hand, he said with moist eyes, "Well done, you are worthy of being my son." Neville, who was standing aside, also came back to his senses from the previous series of changes. Since Turnus used magic to condense a small ball of light just now, Neville's brain, which was not bright, has been frozen. After finally coming back to his senses, he heard the cough of the devil-like uncle, which almost made little Neville wet his pants again. At this time, looking at his uncle, he didn't mean to blame the 2 of them, and Neville finally breathed a sigh of relief. He also walked to Algae's side very obediently, lowered his head and didn't speak, trying to reduce his presence as much as possible. This is the only time that Neville, who who is not very smart, can make the right decision. At this time, Algae also came back to his senses from the surprise of his son's awakening wizard qualifications. Knowing that the two little guys have done some bad things again, their current performances all prove this point. However, since he is not happy today, he does not intend to punish the two little guys. From childhood to adulthood, his son is lively and active, curious and studious, and he wants to know everything. He knows this problem. And his nephew, because of his childhood experience, seems a little taciturn. Only when he is with his son, he will seem like a child. Seeing the two little guys, one trying to please himself, and the other trying to reduce his presence as much as possible, Algae couldn't help but feel a little funny. Okay, you two little guys, let's forget about this time, but don't do it again. The things in this room are too precious and too profound. You shouldn't know them now, so you can't come here again without my permission, okay? After hearing Algae's words, Turnus knew that this was Algae letting them go this time. He quickly responded happily. I know, father, we will never do it again. I know, uncle. Neville was relieved at this time and said a little dully. Today, Turnus awakened the wizard's qualifications. Tell me, what kind of reward do you want? I will agree to it. Algae is also very happy now, so he said. After hearing Algae's words, Turnus' eyes lit up and he was about to make a request. But at this time, Algae said again, but, it's not okay to be too much. Don't make it difficult for me. Hearing Algae's threatening words, Turnus couldn't help but roll his eyes. Who could have thought that an Auror of the Ministry of Magic, a powerful wizard, would be ranked last in the family? That's right, Algae, who seemed to be showing off in front of the two children. In the entire Longbottom family, his status was the lowest. Of course, this was only when Grandma Augusta and Mom Annie, who ranked first and second in the family, were present. Otherwise, the two little ones would still be suppressed. Turnus thought about it and finally said, then Dad, I want a Persian cat, a very beautiful one. This request was also carefully considered by Turnus. It was within the tolerance range of Algae, but it reached the limit of the highest requirement. After listening to Turnus' words, Algae's face looked a little ugly. This is not to say that this request is too excessive and difficult to do, but because if he agreed to his son's request, then undoubtedly, his pocket money for this month can be declared exhausted. He never thought that his son would be so cruel and know his bottom line clearly. However, now that he has promised his son to fulfill one of his requests, as a father, he can't go back on his word. So he could only grit his teeth and agreed with difficulty. Okay, I promise you, I will buy you a Persian cat in a few days, are you satisfied now? Although he was a little angry, he agreed to maintain his dignity as a father. Great, thank you, Dad. Turnus hugged Algae happily. Then he quickly struggled off Algae and ran downstairs. I will tell Grandma and Mom this good news. Turnus said, pulling Neville downstairs. Since Algae has come back from outside, then there is no doubt that his grandma and mom must have come back together. Now taking this opportunity to ask for more benefits is the most important thing. Looking at such a lively son, Algae couldn't help shaking his head and smiling bitterly. Sometimes, it is not necessarily a good thing for a son to be too smart. As for the fact that he had promised Neville before, when he asked him to put forward a condition, he didn't ask much. Neville has been playing with Turnus since he was a child. He has no opinion. Even if he asked, he didn't know what he wanted. It's better to arrange it himself. This can also make his small treasury more relaxed, so that it won't be directly empty because of this reward. After pulling Neville downstairs, there was another round of chaos, so I won't go into details one by one. In short, after this magic awakening, Turnus's collection has added several very interesting magic props. Of course, they are all very interesting and not very dangerous magic props, just for the two children to play. After confirming Turnus's magic talent, the entire Longbottom family no longer has anything to worry about. As long as there is one, at least their Longbottom family will not have any accidents. Even if Neville fails to awaken the wizard talent in the end, at least someone can inherit the Longbottom family's heritage. What no one knows is that on that night, when Turnus fell asleep, he came to a very magical space. This is a very huge space, surrounded by darkness, without a trace of light. At the border of this space, there is a row of luminous objects, separating this place from the darkness outside. And in the center of this space, there is a very huge altar, on which are carved many very ancient mysterious inscriptions. Looking at everything in front of him, Turnus was a little confused. He didn't know where this place was, and who brought him here. It was all a mystery. He couldn't help but shout, "Hey, is there anyone here? Who brought me here? Where are you?" But no matter how he shouted, there was no response here, and no change. Seeing that no one paid attention to him, Turnus could only explore by himself. As he kept walking, he finally walked through this place. This space is very huge, and at the boundary of the space, he also saw those very magical mysterious luminous bodies that isolated the darkness of the outside world. When he was curious and wanted to look outside, he was blocked by the boundless darkness, so that he could not see anything at all, and could only see one color, that is, darkness. And through the weak light of the luminous body, he also found that the place where he was now was like an island. It's just that other islands are on the sea, while this island is in this piece of darkness. According to Turnus's estimation, this island is only the size of 2 football fields. There is nothing else on the entire island except the altar. Finally, Turnus paid attention to the altar. Now only the only thing on this island can answer his doubts. Although he still has some doubts about this altar, he can only walk up now. Turnus quickly came to the edge of the altar, which is an altar more than 3 meters high and 10 meters in radius. There are stairs around the altar, and each stair has 9 steps. The material of the altar is like jade but not jade, like stone but not stone, which looks very strange. Turnus couldn't help but reach out to touch this altar. His hand slowly touched the altar. At the moment when his hand and the altar touched each other, something happened. A huge stream of information appeared in his mind. Under the impact of this stream of information, Turnus felt as if his brain was gently hit on the head with a hammer. This feeling came quickly and went away quickly. In a moment, this information was completely integrated by Turnus. Through the introduction of this short message, Turnus also had a certain understanding of his current situation. This place is a very magical place, and it can be regarded as Turnus's gold finger. This altar has no name, and its function is very simple. There is only one thing, that is, sacrifice. It can sacrifice anything it has, whether it is a real material or an illusory emotion. Through sacrifice, it can get rewards from other worlds, which may be a book, a material, a grass, a branch, or a stone. In short, it depends on his luck to get something from here. Of course, the better the sacrifice, the greater the probability of getting good things. This place can also get some rewards through each sacrifice, which can be used to strengthen it, expand the space here, and strengthen the strength here. Even if Turnus works hard enough in the future, it is not impossible to develop it into a small world. Of course, at this stage, there can only be one creature, Turnus, here. As for other things, if they want to be brought in, they cannot enter here unless they are creatures obtained through sacrifice. Looking at this altar, Turnus couldn't help but want to start his first sacrifice. Not to mention what he could get, just the excitement of feeling like a lottery made him excited. Of course, it is definitely not possible now. After all, he was able to enter here this time because he had just awakened his magic power during the day, which allowed him to communicate with the altar space. Then when he fell asleep at night, he was unconsciously pulled into here by the altar. It is conceivable that now he has nothing else on his body except a very comfortable pajamas. Even if he wants to sacrifice, he needs to prepare. He doesn't believe that with his character, he can sacrifice something inconspicuous like a hair to get something good. As a thought flashed through Turnus, he had reappeared on his soft and comfortable big bed. Looking at the surrounding environment, Turnus pinched himself hard. After a burst of pain, he realized that this was not his illusion, but real. Thinking of this, Turnus immediately got up from the bed. His room is very large, with a size of more than 100 square meters, which was the area of a house in his previous life. But now it is just his bedroom. There are many things in this room, 2 bookshelves, on which are placed the books he has used for preschool education over the years, and some story books from the magic world. In addition, there are some of his own collections, and on the other side, there is a shelf on a cabinet, on which is placed a broom, which is the flying tool belonging to Harry's world, the flying broom. Under the flying broom, in the cabinet, there are some small collections of Turner's over the years, which are some small gadgets bought with his own pocket money. Of course, there are also small toys sold to him by his parents and grandmother. In addition, there is a huge wardrobe for his clothes. There are many other things, all of which are his personal belongings. Among these collections, Turner's picked, and finally found some. In his opinion, there are still some valuable items. With a thought, these things he picked disappeared in his hands. Turner's looked at the scene in front of him and once again confirmed the authenticity of his gold finger. After packing up, Turner's climbed onto his bed, and after calming down, he lay down. After a thought, when he opened his eyes, he was already in the altar space. At the foot of the altar, there were several things, which were the things he had selected and prepared for sacrifice. These things were all Turner's private collections. The presence of these things was not strong, and even if they suddenly disappeared, they would not attract the attention of others. At the same time, the existence of these things had a certain value, and perhaps there would be some good benefits. Among these things, there was a magic wand. Of course, it was not a magic equipment of the weapon level in this world. This is just a toy that can perform a few simple magic tricks on its own. It may look magical, but its actual value is not that high, and the price is only 2 silver sickles. Turnez put the magic prop in his hand on the altar in front of him. Turnez still attaches great importance to this first sacrifice. Turnez slowly pushed it under the altar, and then issued the order for sacrifice. This space serves this altar, and as the owner of this altar, Turnez can do a lot of things with the help of this altar in this space. Of course, it is within the service scope of the altar, and sacrifice is the most important function of this altar. Turnez does not need to do anything. After just giving an order, this altar starts to start. At the beginning, only the edge of the altar, those mysterious inscriptions began to light up little by little. The speed was a bit slow. After a full 3 minutes, all the inscriptions on this altar were finally lit up. When the altar was completely lit up, the magic wand placed on the altar slowly floated into the air. Then, under the magic wand, a black hole-like passage suddenly appeared. In this passage, there was no other color, just like the place outside this space, completely wrapped in darkness. When Turnez could see things again, all the visions had completely disappeared, leaving only one thing, floating quietly above the altar, just where the magic wand floated before. Turnez walked forward excitedly. This is a very strange card. On the back of the card, there is a very mysterious black hole pattern, in which there are dots of golden light. Apart from this, there are no other patterns. On the front of this card, there is a hand pattern. This hand seems to have a magical power. Turnez only took a glance and felt that this hand must be a very flexible hand. The fingers are slender, white and flawless, looking as if they are weak and boneless, very much like a woman's hand. Turnez was a little curious, so he reached out and picked up the card. When his hand touched the card, a message was transmitted to his mind. This is another magical effect of the altar. Everything obtained from the sacrifice can make Turnez understand directly what this thing is, what its function is, and what its attributes are. And now, the card in his hand is not a physical object in the traditional sense, but something like a skill book or skill scroll in an online game. This is a card from a world, an ability of a very famous magician, dexterity. After using this card, Turnez can have the same dexterous hands as the magician. Obviously, this is already a very successful sacrifice. Just relying on a magic prop that is of little use and can only be used as a toy, he sacrificed such an ability, which is undoubtedly a good deal for Turnez. Perhaps, in the world where this magician lives, Turner's magic wand would be very useful. However, in this magical world, such a toy could be exchanged for a magician's skillful hands, which would undoubtedly be a big profit. Looking at the skill card in his hand, Turnez used it without any hesitation. Turnez only felt that a layer of very different energy began to cover his hands. Under the transformation of this energy, he could feel that the flexibility of his hands were much higher than before. This is just the superficial benefit. You have to know that Turnez is only 5 years old now. At the age of 5, he has the hand speed and flexibility of a top magician. For him, the benefits are undoubtedly huge. Apart from anything else, at least, as long as he can keep exercising continuously, then when he grows up, his hands will be very flexible. And this is also very important for wizards. The duel between wizards is not just a competition between the magic strength, and the speed of casting magic between the two sides. Now, Turners, who has the hands of a magician, can imagine his shooting speed, which must be faster than most wizards. This is undoubtedly winning at the starting line. Feeling the flexibility of his hands, Turnus also understood the benefits of this to him, and was naturally overjoyed. After the first good start, Turnus naturally wanted to take advantage of the victory. Maybe he could get more good things in the future. But soon Turnus felt the hardship of life. Except for the first time, he exchanged a pair of skillful hands from the hands of a magician in another world with the help of a magic wand. In the following sacrifices, he was unable to obtain anything useful. Most of them were useless things: a pair of shoes, a pistol, a long sword, and a branch. This was all he got. Looking at these useless things in front of him, Turnus was really disappointed. The shoes were just a pair of worn shoes. Even if they were put outside and sold as second-hand goods, they would not make a few gold galleons. Garbage. As for the pistol, it is just a pistol. The model is the M1911A1 custom model. It is a gold-plated pistol. The collection value is more than the actual value. There are 5 bullets in the pistol, 3 bullets are spare. It is not bad. As for the long sword, it is also very ordinary, without any special features. It is just a long sword that is very common in the era of cold weapons, and the quality may be just that kind of better, not even a magic weapon. Garbage. The last branch is not the trunk of the tree of life, nor is it the branch of the world tree, it is just a branch of a very common tree. Looking at these things in front of him, Turnus felt his gums hurt for some reason. Turnus, who was a little disappointed with the subsequent sacrifices, no longer had the interest to stay here, and left here directly with a thought, covered his head with the quilt and went to sleep. In general, this sacrifice is not a big loss, or compared with the long-term development, it is already a profit. However, apart from the first sacrifice, there was no other gain, which made Turnus very depressed. After the first sacrifice, in the days that followed, Turnus naturally had to find some things to sacrifice. However, the number of times he could harvest good items and useful items was ultimately few, and most of the time, he could only get some insignificant and worthless things. Time flies, and another 3 years have passed. During these 3 years, Turnus's family education has gradually increased. The daily study pressure has also gradually increased, but these are nothing. For Turnus, who was able to pass 12 years of exam-oriented education in his previous life and successfully entered a fairly good university, these preschool educations are just child's play. Even if a lot of the knowledge in it is something he has never been exposed to in his previous life, it is the same to relearn it now. By then, Neville, because Turnus is in front of the thunder, his life will be much easier. In addition to the necessary preschool education, most of the time, he accompanied Turnus to attend classes. He listened to as much as he could. The family did not force him. Of course, if he was bored, he would be allowed to play outside, which was also allowed. After all, Neville's family knew about his situation. Being able to accompany Turnus to attend some classes here was already a good relationship between the two children, and there was no need to force him to do more. In the past, Neville was very quiet when playing outside, but this time it seemed that something had changed. Just outside, Neville's screams kept coming, and he seemed very scared. Turnus, who noticed something was wrong, hurried to the window and looked at the garden outside. Just outside, Neville flew up to the sky on a flying carpet for some reason in the garden outside. The flying carpet seemed to be stimulated by something, and the flight was not very stable, which also made Neville a little scared. Moreover, it was not known whether there was something wrong with the flying carpet, or whether Neville had not controlled it well. Neville on the flying carpet had no way to sit steadily. He was constantly bumping in the air with the flying carpet, and there was a danger of falling at any time. When Turnus looked outside, Neville could no longer hold on and fell off the flying carpet. Looking at Neville, who had already started free fall, Turnus's heart began to rise to his throat, and it was possible that he would jump out at any time. For such a situation, Turnus had no better solution. Although he had learned some magic in the past few years, and had already obtained his own magic wand in advance, a 12 3/4 inch pine wood with dragon's heart tendon is the wand core. But with his magic level, it was undoubtedly a fantasy to want to contact Neville, who was falling rapidly at this time. Looking at Neville, who was falling continuously and about to fall to the ground, Turners was also very anxious, but at this time, he was also powerless. Just when Neville was about to fall to the ground and get hurt, something very magical happened. Neville's body, which was about to fall to the ground, suddenly bounced up again under the action of a magical force. The whole body bounced up from the ground like a bouncy ball. After landing again, it bounced up again, but each time it was lower than the last time. In the end, Neville landed on the ground steadily. Although his butt hurt a little, it was much better than before. Seeing this, Turnus knew that Neville had awakened his wizard talent. As his brother, Turnus was naturally very happy about this. Turnus jumped directly from the balcony of his room to the garden outside and ran quickly to Neville's side. Neville was a little embarrassed at this time, with a lot of weed debris and dirt on his body. However, compared with awakening his talent, these are just trivial matters. Neville, don't be in a daze, get up quickly, let's go tell Grandma the good news and make her happy. As he said, Turnus reached out, grabbed Neville's hand, and pulled him up from the ground. Neville was still in a daze, obviously he hadn't recovered from the shock before. Turnus didn't care about that. He took Neville's hand and wanted to run into the manor. It was during the working hours, so there were only the two of them and Grandma Augusta in the whole manor, as well as his tutor Slyn, and their house elves Nipper and Carrie. Slyn had just seen Neville's performance, so he didn't care about Turnus's skipping class behavior. Turnus took Neville and ran into the hall of the manor. At this time, Grandma Augusta was knitting a scarf, which was what he did every year at this time. When winter came, their family would receive such a scarf. When she saw Turnus pulling Neville in with a disheveled Neville, Grandma Augusta was a little angry, thinking that Turnus had secretly taken Neville out to play again. Turnus saw the look on his grandmother's face, and without waiting for her to start scolding him, he said directly, "Grandma, I just saw Neville awaken his wizard talent." When he fell from the sky, he instinctively awakened his talent and bounced several times on the ground, but he was not injured. This should be the effect of magic. Seeing Turners' red face and excitement, and Neville's lingering fear, Augusta also believed Turners' statement. She knew that although Turners was sometimes naughty, he would not lie in front of important things. Augusta quickly put down the needlework in her hands, walked up quickly, stretched out her hands, and tremblingly touched Neville's chubby face. Gently wiped the grass leaves on Neville's face, and at the same time, a trace of magic in her hands slowly explored Neville's body. After feeling a little resistance, she stopped, because this was enough to prove that Neville's body at this time already had magic. This alone is enough. It doesn't matter whether his talent is good or bad. What matters is that the two descendants of their Longbottom family are already wizards. Okay, Neville is really great. You are the pride of our Longbottom family. Tell me what you want to eat tonight. Grandma will ask Carrie to make it for you. If you want any gift, tell Grandma and she will buy it for you as a reward. Looking at the excited Grandma, Turnus also felt very happy. This might be the happiest thing for Grandma in these years. Although the Longbottom family already has a talented descendant like him, there is another one who has never awakened the wizard talent. This is a worry for Grandma after all. Now that Neville has awakened the wizard talent, this new disease has been cured without medicine. Neville was still a little frightened at this time. When facing the grandma who he was a little afraid of since childhood, he still couldn't believe it was true. Although his grandma and family members have been very good to him since he was a child, Neville didn't know why he was a little afraid of his grandma. Now in his heart, the strict grandma is really so kind and amiable, which makes Neville a little at a loss for a while. Looking at these two somewhat contradictory people getting along, Turnus always feels some unknown sense of humor. At this time, the white Persian cat who was accompanying his grandma also came to join in the fun. She jumped lightly onto Turnus's shoulder, tilting her head and looking at Neville and the others with some curiosity. This white Persian cat was a gift Turnus received from his father Algi when he awakened his wizard talent. This is a very beautiful cat, and its appearance is outstanding among the entire tribe, and it is very valuable. Moreover, this cat is very spiritual and smart, and the magic power in its body is pure, which is considered a very good pet. When I bought her at that time, I spent a lot of money. This white cat was named Snow by Turnus, which means snow white, indicating her snow white hair. Turnus took Snow off his shoulder, held it in his arms, and began to stroke the cat. This is also his favorite thing to do after he got Snow. Snow, are you also very happy that Neville awakened his wizard talent? Snow answered Turnus with a very melodious cat cry, which seemed a little lazy. When Algy and Annie came back from the Ministry of Magic, they also knew that Neville had awakened his wizard talent, and they were naturally very happy. In fact, to celebrate, they had promised to take them to Diagon Alley to play and buy some toys this weekend. This made Neville and Turnus very happy. Neville was happy to be able to go to Diagon Alley to buy food again, and Turnus was happy because he could shop on Taobao again. The matter of Taobao started with the industry of the Longbottom family. In Diagon Alley, there are a large number of shops, and these shops are of various types and involve many industries. Among these shops, there are two shops of the Longbottom family, one of which is called Slug Gillis Pharmacy, which is a very famous herbal medicine shop. The other one was Turnus's main target, a junk shop. The name was Junk Shop, and this shop had the same function as the junk collection point in the Muggle world. Some magic-related items and books were often recycled here. This was his Taobao Holy Land, and it was also the main source of his sacrifices over the years. It was precisely because of such a place that he could have a steady stream of sacrifices for sacrifice. Otherwise, with his pocket money of only 5 silver sickles a week, even if he could get some funding from Neville, it would not be enough to support long-term sacrifices. And this time, it was another opportunity for him to purchase some items for sacrifice. He was naturally very happy about this. After dinner, the family sat together and chatted about some family matters. The theme this time was Neville, who awakened his wizard talent. Neville, have you thought about what gift you want? If you haven't, you have to think about it as soon as possible. The day after tomorrow is the weekend, and we have to go to Diagon Alley then. Algy looked at Neville, who was still excited. Uncle, I haven't thought about it yet, but I will think about it. Neville could also feel that other people in the family valued him. This was something he had never felt since he was a child, which made him very happy. Since he finished eating, his face has been red and excited. Neville, don't be polite, my father's small treasury is abundant again, just tell me what you want, and let him buy it for you, he. Turnus gave a very sinister suggestion. Hearing what Turnus said, Algy, who was sitting next to him, rolled his eyes speechlessly. You little brat, do you want to be punished? I don't have much money, so don't pay attention to me, or I'll beat you up. Turnus is not afraid of him now. Not to mention that his grandmother is still here, even if she is not, there is still his mother Annie. With them, his father can't make any waves. You little brat, don't expect me to pay for your shopping tomorrow, solve it yourself. As a father, Algy still feels that he can't let his son be so proud at this time, otherwise he will have things to do in the future. But his little threat, for Turnus, is not taken seriously at all. He turned his head to look at his mother, and said coquettishly, Mom, I want to buy something tomorrow, can you give me some pocket money, please, Mom? That well-behaved look makes people like it. As a mother, she had no ability to resist such a Tina's. Well, I'll give you 2 gold galleons this time. No more. Tina's was overjoyed to hear that such a large sum of money had arrived, but he would not forget his sponsor. He happily kissed his mother on the face. Thank you, Mom. I love you the most. Then, he climbed up from his mother's arms and came to his grandmother. He repeated the same trick and easily obtained 3 more gold galleons. After getting the money, Turnus proudly shook the 5 gold galleons in his hand, and looked at his father proudly, as if he was very powerful. Such performance made the 3 adults present feel funny, but they all cooperated with him and held back their laughter. Turnus also knew that such performance was a bit childish, but as an orphan in his previous life, he was really greedy for such a feeling. Feeling such a family feeling, let alone asking him to act childish, even if it was a little too much, he could accept it. Afterwards, after another warm scene, everyone returned to their respective rooms to sleep. At this time in the wizarding world, there were not many real entertainment activities. Everyone just read the newspaper, played wizard chess, and had some outdoor activities every day. There was nothing else. Therefore, everyone's work and rest time generally did not last until late at night. After returning to his room, Turnus did not rest immediately, but came to the sacrifice space first. Reasonably, it has been sorted out by him at this time. At this time, the space has a certain scale. Not only has the space expanded a lot, but there are also many isolated spaces here. In these spaces, there are well-differentiated single rooms for various projects. Under the layout of Turnus, the situation here is in good order. In these separate spaces, there are some valuable items he has obtained over the years. Among them are the magic knowledge of other worlds on the magic side, such as the basic notes of elemental magic, and some special props and materials of the magic world. Among them, the most useful ones are 3 elf fruits, which were obtained by Turnus's sacrifice. Not only can it breed an elemental elf after providing enough energy, but it is also a very rare thing even in the original world. Moreover, after using the fruit of the elves, you can also gain affinity with nature. Not only the affinity of magic elements, but also a great affinity for all things in nature. One of these 3 fruits has already entered Turnus' stomach, which has greatly enhanced his physical fitness, magic power reserves, etc. For the other fruit, Turnus intends to breed an elemental spirit, which is a very rare creature after all. In this world, although there are legends about them, they have never been seen. If such an elemental spirit can appear by Turnus' side, it will be a great help to him and the Longbottom family. As for the last fruit, Turnus has not yet figured out what to do. In addition to this, there is also a space ring, which is also something Turnus needs very much now. The size of this space ring is about more than 1,000 cubic meters of space. In fact, the size of the space is not so important to Turnus. The key is that the space ring is convenient enough. There are also storage space equipment in Harry's world, but most of them are just big pockets made by the traceless stretching spell, which are a bit troublesome to use. It's like a space ring, which can communicate with the spirit directly. Whatever you want will appear directly, and whatever you want to put will disappear after touching it. In addition to these very valuable magic props, there are also some magic medicine machines, magic materials, etc., which are of great help to Turnus. In addition to the magic side, there are also other things. Among them is a quantum watch, which has a very high technological content. It not only has a very good intelligent program to assist Turnus in using it, but its computing speed and storage space are also very large. Its appearance is very helpful to Turnus. There is also an exploration goggles, which has strong auxiliary functions, night vision, thermal imaging, microwave detection, information collection, protection, etc., with many functions, which is a very good auxiliary prop. In addition to these, there are some high-tech potions, nutritional potions that replenish the body's consumption, and sprays for treating external injuries. The most important thing is that among these potions, there is a brain development potion, which is what Turnus needs most urgently at this stage. Not only can it develop the brain, but it can also indirectly improve the strength of mental power. In Harry's world, although magic power is very important, only with magic power can a wizard use magic normally. However, mental power is equally important. Mental power determines the difficulty of your personal use of magic, and also determines the strength of your magic. So, these things are of great help to Turnus. In addition to these, there are some materials on the technological side, some steel alloys and some technical books. However, because at this stage, the wizard world still occupies most of Turnus' living space, so these technological things are of little use to him except for his own use. This time, he came to the sacrificial space to prepare for his trip to Diagon Alley a few days later. Here, although most of the things he could use were collected by him, there are also some things that he thinks are valuable, and they have been sacrificed again through the sacrificial altar. But there are always some things left, which are of little use to him and not worth sacrificing again, so he collected them. This world is also a world with magic. Some things here are of very high value. It may not be cost-effective to sacrifice them again. Unless you are very lucky, it will just be a waste. It would be better to take them to some shops in this world, sell them, exchange some money, and use the money to buy some things he needs. Wouldn't it be great? This is what Turnus has done over the years, and it is because of this need that his vision has been greatly improved. With the help of the altar, he can basically determine the value of the thing and how to deal with it at the first glance. Okay, this time, let's get rid of the things in here and exchange them for some money. At this time, Turners was in front of a large isolation chamber. Inside, there were some magic materials and props that he had accumulated over the years, which were still valuable in this world. Before, because of his own strength problems, he couldn't take them out, so he piled them up here. Most of these things were more or less stained with some ominous auras, such as darkness, curses, blood evil, corpse gas and other negative auras. It was obviously impossible to get rid of them in Diagon Alley. Not to mention their source, such things were obviously classified as black magic props. Turners was sure that if he dared to take these things, it would not take long for him to be invited to the Ministry of Magic for tea by the Aurors of the Ministry of Magic and the Strikers. Maybe by then, he could have a very wonderful encounter with his father. It's different now, because just a few days ago, Turners had successfully used some magic materials from other worlds to create a new wand for himself. A wand that does not belong to this world and has no origin. This is a wand that uses a very pure magic crystal as energy, mithril is the wand body, and very ancient and profound magic inscriptions engraved on the surface with refined gold and red gold. Inside the wand core, there is a bunch of his own hair as the wand core. This wand not only incorporates the wand-making process of Harry's world, but also refers to the magic prop-making technology of other worlds. After years of research and a lot of sweat, it was finally completed. A very powerful wand. Well, no more pretending, this is actually a wand made entirely of magic materials, and its power is quite decent. There is really no way he doesn't know much about the wand-making process of Harry's world. As for the production of magic props in other worlds, he only has the space ring and his holy shield badges references, as well as some words in the basic elemental magic notebook. It was a stroke of luck that he was able to make this magic wand. This was also thanks to the assistance of the quantum watch in his hand, as well as the technological equipment, and the precise execution ability, which enabled him to complete the engraving of the magic inscription. Otherwise, with his body that was only 8 years old, it would be a fantasy to want to do these things, even if the soul in this body, counted now, is almost 30 years old. His magic wand is powerful, at least it is a little stronger than the pine wood wand in his hand. The power of the mithril magic wand is even stronger than the pine wood wand for his current strength. After all, the handle of the mithril magic wand is inlaid with a magic crystal, which can provide him with a certain amount of magic support. His current physical condition is, after all, only an 8-year-old child, although there is no shortage of various food nutrients in these years. He also secretly does some exercises and supplements nutrient solution to make his body much stronger than his peers. But this is very limited, at most it is the physical strength of a child of about 10 years old. With such physical strength, you can imagine how much magic power he has in his body. Even with the increase of the fruit of the elves and the bonus of the natural affinity talent, his magic power reserve is a little over the standard, but at most it is the level of a child of 15 or 16 years old. Although children of this age have grown up, their magic power reserves are not small. But it depends on who you compare with. If you compare with ordinary students, this is already very powerful. However, compared with those black wizards in Nocturne Alley who have been wandering on the edge of life and death for many years and use various black magic, it is really nothing. So, at this stage, the mithril wand has greatly improved his combat endurance. In addition, his mental strength surpasses his peers and even adults, and the combat power he can exert is a little stronger than that of ordinary adult wizards. This is why he was confident and ready to go to Nocturne Alley. When Turners opened the door of the warehouse here, he felt a dark and decayed breath coming towards him. Even though he was prepared, he was a little unprepared. However, the location here meant that these things could not make any big waves, and Turners soon adapted to it. After entering, he selected a few valuable items and materials from the numerous collections and put them into the space ring, waiting to exchange them for money tomorrow. Then, Turners quickly walked out of it, and after locking the door here, he was really relieved. This is not over yet. Turners came to the door of another room again. This time he did not make more preparations and opened the door here directly. The space here is not as bad as the previous warehouse. This is an alchemy workshop, which Turners usually uses to practice alchemy. Naturally, there are no messy things in it. Here, many things have been born, and the mithril wand was born here. In addition to this, another thing here is the purpose of Turnus's coming here this time. This is a dark blue vest that looks like leather armor. The outside of the vest doesn't look special, it's just an ordinary leather vest. My masterpiece, whether it can be safely returned this time depends on you. Turnus took the leather armor off the shelf. Just as Turnus took off the leather armor, the inside of the leather armor was finally exposed a little bit. I saw that the inner layer of the leather armor had magical inscriptions drawn with mithril and fine gold. This is the key to this leather armor. Don't underestimate the fancy magic inscriptions inside this leather armor, which are copied from the powerful magic item, the Holy Shield badge. After the huge calculation of the quantum computer, the final model was finally determined. It has a very powerful magic protection ability. At least at this stage, with Turner's strength, there is no way to break the defense of this leather armor. And more importantly, this leather armor not only has magic defense, but also outstanding physical defense. The skin of the deep-sea magic shark, as the main body of the leather armor, is enough to defend against most of the slashing and stabbing of swords, spears, and halberds without leaving any scars. If the mithril wand is his weapon to intimidate those dark wizards, then this leather armor is his real trump card to save his life. Of course, in addition to this leather armor, there is also a black cloak, which is also one of the necessary items this time. This is not Turner's own masterpiece. He just bought a magic cloak from Diagon Alley, which can play a certain role in concealing his breath and hiding his whereabouts. However, he also made some changes to it. Apart from other things, the length of this black cloak still needs to be changed, otherwise it will cover him. At the same time, this cloak also has a face towel to cover his face. At this time, Turnus is also a figure of more than 1.3 meters. With shoes and some disguises, he can easily disguise himself as an old wizard with a hunched figure. After putting all the things that might be used the day after tomorrow into the space ring, Turnus exited the space and prepared to go to bed. In the new day, Turnus always felt that time passed a little slowly. Perhaps because he could go to Nocturne Alley soon, he had an inexplicable sense of anticipation for tomorrow's journey. After a whole day of suffering, he finally waited for the time to go to Diagon Alley. Turnus prepared everything early in the morning and waited for his parents. Under Turnus' constant urging, the couple reluctantly set foot on the fireplace to Diagon Alley. Through the Flow network, they easily arrived at Diagon Alley. Mom, you go buy a gift for Neville. I won't go. I'll wait for you at the junk shop. You don't have to rush and take your time to choose. Anyway, I will be busy for a long time. With that, he ran away without waiting for the two adults to react. This child is still so impatient and has no seriousness. Every time he comes here, he goes to the junk shop. I don't know why he is looking for so many small things. Annie complained, a little unhappy. Every time her son comes here, he goes back to the junk shop to search for a long time, which makes her feel very headache. Moreover, this time, she originally planned to take her son to have a good stroll here, but she didn't expect that her son slipped away before she could open her mouth. Algie patted his wife's shoulder and said comfortingly, "Okay, he has come here many times, don't worry, let's help little Neville choose a gift first, and then go to find him together. That's the only way," Annie said with some regret. "Okay, little Neville, what gifts do you want? Uncle will take you to buy gifts first, okay?" After comforting his wife, Algie did not forget the main purpose of his visit this time. He squatted down and asked Neville with a smile. "Uncle, I also want to have a pet like my cousin. Can you buy me one?" Neville looked at his uncle with a longing face. Algie would naturally not disagree with Neville's small request. He reached out and took Neville's hand and said, "Then let's go to the pet store now and see if there are any pets that Neville likes." "Well, thank you, Uncle." Neville was very happy to hear that he could also have a pet. Looking at the two people holding hands, Annie also put aside her dissatisfaction with Turnus and followed. The protagonist this time is Neville, so she naturally has to follow. Let's not talk about the situation of Neville and the other two, let's talk about Turnus, who left his parents on the other side. After he left his parents, he did run towards the scrap shop at first. However, after leaving his parents' sight, he changed direction and ran deeper into Diagon Alley. In the depths of Diagon Alley, there is a larger area. This is Nocturne Alley on the other side of Diagon Alley. There is the largest recycling station for black magic props here, and there are also many shops selling black magic props. The environment of Nocturne Alley is not as clean and spacious as Diagon Alley, with dense traffic. This place is more like the other side of Diagon Alley, with crowded streets, very dirty and full of a very pungent smell. Being here, people feel depressed, heavy, and evil. Before entering Nocturne Alley, Turners found a place and changed all his disguises. The information shown by Turners now should be the image of a hunchbacked old wizard of about 1.5 meters. All other information of the body was perfectly covered by Turners. Even the hands exposed outside were wearing a pair of exquisite leather gloves. And his voice was changed into the hoarse voice of an old wizard by a voice changer. After making sure that everything was disguised perfectly, he finally stepped into Nocturne Alley, which is known as the gathering place of dark wizards. Turners held a cane in his hand, pretending to be old, and walked in slowly. Not long after entering Nocturne Alley, Turners felt some eyes on him. Here, the role of exploration goggles is limited to the minimum, and can only play a protective and magnifying effect. Other electronic facilities cannot be used normally in this magical place, and will always be disturbed by the magical elements around. Turners did not panic at all, and continued to walk slowly towards the inside of Nocturne Alley. His goal this time was also very clear, which was the very famous black magic props processing store mentioned in the original plot, and the owner was Borgen Burke. This store can be said to be the only store Turners is familiar with, let alone seeing or hearing about other stores. Moreover, this store can provide everything he needs, and he can sell all the black magic props in his hands to Borgen Burke. He did not stop and walked deeper into Nocturne Alley. As he walked along the way, he also saw the surrounding situation clearly. There are also some shops around here, selling all kinds of things, but generally speaking, they are all related to black magic. But it makes sense. If it is not related to black magic, there is no need to come here. Wouldn't it be better for him to open a store in Diagon Alley? Why worry here and live a life of worry all day long? Turners could feel that as he went deeper, many people around him had already noticed him. He didn't care much about this. Let's not talk about the strength of these people. Even if they are strong, there are rules for each place. Even if this is Nocturne Alley, a no man's land, no one will openly take action here. After all, if someone comes in casually, a large number of people will immediately surround him and eat him up. Who will dare to come here in the future? Wouldn't this cut off the livelihood of the people who opened a shop here? This will undoubtedly cause hostility from the people here. How many people who can open a shop here are good people? If their money is cut off, won't they be impatient to live? Therefore, even if they take action, they will find those who are obviously not strong and do not belong here. Only in this way can they feel at ease to take action. Moreover, such a target must be of sufficient value. Of course, it is also a secret attack. Few people take action openly. No one wants to be torn off the last fig leaf. Although Turners was a little nervous, he still followed his current way of action and walked slowly towards the inside of Nocturne Alley. He finally stopped when he saw a magic shop called Borgen and Burke. He turned around and walked slowly into the magic shop. After entering, he did not look at the decorations on the surrounding shelves, but went straight to the counter where Borgen and Burke were. He said in a hoarse voice, "Boss, I have some things here, I wonder if you will accept them." Borgen was still very interested in this new customer. He didn't often meet a customer who was so strict with himself. He looked at Turners with interest, put down a black magic prop he had been looking at, nodded and said, "I do buy some magic props that are not available on the market, I wonder what you have." After listening to Borgen's words, Turners did not hesitate, and took out several magic props he found yesterday from his wide sleeves. When these magic props were taken out by Turners and placed one by one in front of Borgen's counter, even with Borgen's knowledge and experience, he couldn't help but take a breath. Who is this guy? Why do these magic props in his hand have such a strong evil aura? Where did they come from? Single quote. A series of questions popped up in Bojin's mind. As he looked at the magic props one by one, he became more and more confused. These things are not something that ordinary people can have. The person who can take out these things is definitely not a simple person. This also made Bojin put away his previous contemptuous attitude, and he picked up an item from the counter with great care and examined it carefully. The first magic prop that Bojin picked up was a dagger made of bones of some creature. Although this dagger looked rough, the aura attached to it made it impossible for anyone to despise it. The surface of this bone dagger was completely covered with a layer of deep red, almost black material. If he was not mistaken, these things should be blood. It can be imagined that the blood of the person stabbed by this dagger can condense into a layer of patina-like material on it. How much life and blood can reach this level? Not only is there a surging murderous intent on it, but also the resentment of the killed creature before it died. When Bojin picked up the dagger, his brain was like being hit hard by a heavy hammer, buzzing. Fortunately, his strength is not bad. He has been in contact with various black magic props for many years, and he has his own unique ways to resist these things. He quickly got rid of the influence of the dagger, but he was still frightened and quickly put down the dagger in his hand. Bojin looked at Turners with a deep meaning, and without saying much, he picked up another magic prop to check it out. This is a very strange oil lamp. In this lamp, Bojin can be sure that there is no lamp oil or any energy source. However, it can burn all the time, although the flame it produces is also very strange. A gloomy green flame continued to burn in this lamp. It was not until Bojin picked up this lamp that he really understood the horror of this lamp. This is a soul lamp that uses the soul of a creature as fuel, and now, the flame inside is a burning soul. If you look closely, you can also see a human figure that looks a little twisted and hideous because of the burning in this flame. After careful observation, Bojin found that this lamp did not require any special means to ignite the soul. Just place a creature that has died not long ago in front of this lamp, and it will be able to absorb the soul of the person who has just died as fuel for this lamp. However, the conditions for this lamp to absorb the soul are also very harsh. First of all, the creature that has died not long ago must be within 5 minutes of death. Moreover, the process of collecting the soul is also very long, and it takes a full hour to complete. So, this lamp is basically a chicken rib. Maybe it can be useful when you take revenge on your enemies and the people you hate. And, first of all, you must have the strength to kill your enemy, and then you can collect his soul and torture him. Putting down the soul-burning lamp in his hand, Bojin looked at the next prop. As the magic props came one by one, even the experienced Bojin couldn't help but be shocked. Where did these magic props come from? Why did each one of them make him, the manager of the black magic props store, feel so shocked? If these things appeared in the current magic world, they would definitely cause a very strong storm. However, isn't this exactly what he needs? If these things flow out of his magic shop, it will not only make his magic shop famous, but also make him gain huge profits. Why not do this? After thinking about it, Bojin made up his mind that he must buy these magic props, even if he didn't hesitate to spend all his savings over the years. He believed that as long as these things here were in his hands, it would not take long for the price he spent to be recovered, and it would be easy to even multiply it several times. After making up his mind, Bojin began to calculate. As a businessman, he needed to guess the psychological price of his customers. It can not only take these magic props, but also make him bleed as little as possible. As for robbing, he has thought about it. But think about it, can the person who can take out these magic props be a simple person? How is this possible? Besides, although businessmen have to be cunning, they must also have a certain degree of integrity, otherwise, the signboard of his store will be smashed in his own hands. Anyway, there are enough benefits for him to make a lot of money, so why should he take that risk? After calculating for a while, Bojin finally gave his offer. Sir, what do you think of 150,000 gold galleons? Turners didn't know these things very well. In the current magic world, understanding the price and value does not mean knowing their price. So for the price quoted by Bojin, Turners didn't have a bottom line, and didn't know whether it was higher or lower than the market price. But it is very likely to be lower, but he didn't care, because such an offer has exceeded his psychological price. In his mind, he had already estimated the price, which was 120,000 gold galleons. As long as it exceeded this price, he would agree to sell it. Now that it was so much higher, he was even more willing. As for whether Borgen would make more money in the end, Tinas didn't care. After all, he had made so much money, so he should let him make some money. Seeing that Tinas didn't agree, Borgen obviously misunderstood and thought that Tinas was not satisfied with the offer. His back was wet with sweat at this time. This was already more than half of the price he could afford. He could afford a little more, and these things were indeed worth a higher price. However, he also had to consider the operation of his shop. If there was no flow of funds, his shop operation would be greatly affected. However, in order to get this batch of goods, Bojin has to fight hard. He gritted his teeth, stamped his feet, and spoke again. If you are not satisfied, I can increase the price by 30,000 gold galleons. This is the limit of what I can offer. If it is more, I really can't afford it. What do you think, sir? This sentence made Turnus, who was about to agree, stunned. He didn't expect that just because the offer exceeded his expectations and he was a little surprised, he didn't immediately agree, but he got an extra 30,000 gold galleons in just a few breaths. How could he not agree to such a good thing? Turnus pretended to ponder for a while, then slowly nodded and agreed. Moreover, he said very cunningly, let's do it this time. I hope I can get a satisfactory price next time I come. The meaning of this sentence is naturally self-evident. He is telling Bojin that he will have such good goods in his hands in the future, so that he can prepare enough funds next time and don't let himself down again. This was just a casual remark by Turnus, but he didn't expect it to attract Bojin's attention. His heart suddenly became lively, very surprised and unexpected. If such good things can get a fixed source of goods in the future, then for him, this is undoubtedly very good news. This will not only greatly improve the competitiveness of his store, but also make him gain a lot of benefits. This was undoubtedly what he liked to see, so when he paid Turnus with gold coins, he put an extra 5,000 gold coins in the dragon skin bag. The dragon skin bag was cast with the traceless extension spell, otherwise, how could it hold 185,000 gold galleons? Turnus took the dragon skin bag, didn't count it, and put it directly in his arms, and turned around and walked out without saying anything more. Borgen didn't make any extra moves for this, and didn't mention the extra 5,000 gold galleons, because he knew that the other party would definitely understand what he meant. Mentioning it here would make him look a little stingy. When Turnus left Borgen's store, his hand had already reached into the dragon skin bag and put all the gold galleons in it into the space ring. Then he stuffed the empty dragon skin bag into his arms, ready to deal with it later. He didn't stay in Nocturne Alley for long. Here, he didn't have anything to buy, and even if he wanted to buy, he wouldn't be here. However, if he wanted to leave here safely, he obviously needed to go through some tests, otherwise, it would be impossible. As the examiner, this time, he was ready at this time. When Turnus passed through an alley, two magics suddenly shot out from that alley and attacked Turnus. Turnus had been prepared for this, or in other words, he had been preparing since he came here. Before the two magics came into his eyes, he had already noticed them. With a flip of his palm, a silver-white magic wand with light gold and red patterns appeared in his hand. His body flexibly rotated in place, and he passed through the gap between the two magic attacks perfectly, avoiding the two magics perfectly. At the same time, the magic wand in his hand shook slightly, and two wind blades with fast attack speed shot towards the two people who attacked him along the trajectory of the magic. For this sudden counterattack, the two people who made the dirty move were a little surprised. But he was an experienced veteran after all, and he dodged it easily. But later, when he saw the wall that was attacked by the two wind blades before, even dark wizards like them couldn't help but gasp. The wall that was attacked was easily cut open by the two inconspicuous wind blades. The wound was nearly 1 foot long, and it was at least 2 inches deep. If such an attack hit a person, you can imagine what the result would be. Seeing the situation here, the people who were still hiding in the dark and ready to watch the show silently put away their thoughts. They originally thought that if the two brothers Doric could easily kill this outsider this time, they might be able to get a share. But now looking at the situation, the two brothers Doric are afraid that they are in danger. This also made them feel lucky. Fortunately, they didn't stand out. Otherwise, they might be the ones who died. The three people fighting in the field didn't have as many thoughts as these people at this time. After seeing the power of Turner's attack, the two brothers Doric didn't dare to be careless at this time. They stared at Turner's very carefully, looking for his flaws, and wanted to kill him with one blow. And seeing that the other party didn't act immediately, Turner's didn't act immediately. This was the first time he fought with other wizards, and he wanted to feel more of this atmosphere and accumulate some combat experience for him. This is Turner's. With many means of saving his life, he has been firmly in an invincible position. Only then can he have such leisure and elegance. Otherwise, no one would give his opponent a chance to breathe. After waiting for a while, the Doric brothers finally started to act. First, one of them kept waving the magic wand in his hand, and small magic balls kept attacking Turner's. 10,000 bullets fired at once. Such an attack does not have much power, but it is fast and frequent, leaving the opponent no chance to breathe. The other person began to accumulate magic power and look for this opportunity. Whether to release powerful attack magic or defensive magic depends on what Turnus will do next. This attack mode, although Turnus is a magic battle rookie, but, have you ever seen pigs run before eating pork? He naturally understands that in this situation, he must not let himself fall into a passive position, otherwise, what awaits him will only be a series of violent storms and attacks. So, after making a decision, Turnus no longer hesitated. When the mithril wand in his hand was waved, a light blue wind wall appeared in front of him. Resist the wind wall. This magic is a wind defense magic learned from the elemental magic notes. It not only provides strong defense, but also lasts for a period of time. During the duration of this wind wall, if you want to attack him from the other end of the wind wall, you have to break this wind wall or wait for it to disappear. Turnus has also tested the defensive ability of this wind wall. Ordinary light weapons pose no threat to it. The bullets shot from it will be blown up by this wind wall. And those magics with little power will not penetrate this wind wall. If you want to break this wind wall, at least an adult wizard needs to hit it with all his strength. Just in this way, it can give Turnus enough buffer time so that he can make enough responses. After this wind wall rose, the magic missile attacks of the Doric brothers were blocked by this wind wall, and no missile could penetrate this wind wall. Seeing this situation, the other brother of Doric could no longer wait. Due to the limitations of the geographical environment, the two of them had no way to act separately to contain Turnus. Therefore, there is no way to target the magical defense of the wind wall. After all, the defense of the wind wall is too rigid. It can only form a defense on one side and cannot take care of too much. In this case, they can only confront Turnus head-on, otherwise, they can't attack Turnus at all. Then their action this time can be declared a failure, but at the same time, they will also provoke such a powerful wizard. This is absolutely not allowed. So, after seeing that his brother's magic missile containment tactics did not work, he no longer waited for the opportunity. He waved the magic wand in his hand, and a pale green magic attacked the wind wall in front of Turnus. Avada Kedavra. This is the most powerful and lethal magic in the black magic at this stage. The power of this magic is not because of its destructive power, but because of its concentration of power. A large amount of powerful magic gathers at one point and then continuously releases it. This is its horror, and the effect of this magic is also very powerful, which can directly separate the soul from the body. In other words, if attacked by such black magic, then the soul-burning lamp that Turnus had taken out before would not be able to collect any souls. When seeing this magic, the people hiding in the dark around them all took a breath of cold air. Even they had to be careful to deal with this magic. If they were not careful, they would die on the spot. When seeing such an unforgivable curse appear in front of him, and the target of the attack was still him, to be honest, Turnus himself was a little panicked. But when he thought about it, he had a very powerful protective item on him, so he didn't have to worry about his life safety. Thinking of this, he was not too panicked. Instead, he calmly cast the magic again. Lightning flash. This is a low-level magic with thunder attribute. It is quite powerful, with decent single-target destructive power, and the magic flying speed is also very fast. When the lightning shot out from the top of Turner's wand and attacked the wizard who had been releasing small magic bullets, Turner's did not stop, and another, torrent jet. A very powerful water flow shot out from the top of Turner's wand again, heading towards the other person's killing curse. And just when Turner's attack was completed, the wind wall also dissipated under the attack of the killing curse. In this way, it was Turner's water flow magic that met the man's killing curse. Seeing this scene, the onlookers around couldn't help shaking their heads. They had all been exposed to the killing curse to some extent. They knew the power of the killing curse very well. It was undoubtedly a fool's dream to want to stop the sharp edge of the killing curse with a stream of water. Some people even shook their heads secretly, ready to go down and get a share of the spoils at any time. In their eyes, Turner's move was undoubtedly seeking his own death. But soon, a shocking scene appeared. Turner's shot out a stream of water from the top of the wand, although it was retreating step by step under the green magic of the killing curse. However, for some reason, it was very strong, although the point of contact between the two was constantly tilting towards Turner's. What was shocking was that the speed of this tilt was not as devastating as they imagined, and it was defeated as soon as it came into contact. Instead, it stood up tenaciously like a strong grass in the wind, always persisting, and was not completely crushed by the killing curse. On the other side, the black wizard who had been releasing magic missiles was caught off guard by Turner's sudden lightning, and a powerful lightning directly struck him. The paralysis of lightning and the fierce destructive power made him tremble, and his whole body fell to the ground uncontrollably, twitching awkwardly. The black wizard on the side saw his brother in pain under the enemy's spell, and he was also a little anxious. He couldn't help but increase the supply of magic power, wanting to take down the guy in front of him as soon as possible, so as to see what happened to his brother. But what made him desperate was that even if he increased the release of magic power, he still couldn't take down Turner's immediately, but just kept pushing the contact point in the middle towards Turner's. This made him a little uncomfortable. His brother's situation was unclear, and even if he increased the output of magic power, he seemed to be unable to do anything to the other party. To make matters worse, Turner's had stretched out his left hand at this time, holding a very strange magic prop in his hand, which was very rich in magic power. This gave him a bad feeling, especially when the magic prop was aimed at him. The feeling became even stronger. And his feeling was not wrong. The thing that Turner's took out was indeed a magic prop, and it was a very useful magic prop. A magic prop that can cast magic without the help of a wand. This can be regarded as a casual creation of Turner's. Even he himself did not expect that it would come in handy here. This magic prop is actually not very powerful. It does not have many functions, nor is it complicated. It can only cast some very powerful magic through the magic inscriptions engraved in it and the magic crystal in the prop. However, when this prop appears in the hands of two magicians who are deadlocked with each other, it is different. There are many factors required for wizards to release magic. The most important of these is the coordination between the wizard's own mental power and magic power, and then successfully cast a magic through the magic wand and magic spell. In other words, these four conditions are very important. Of course, some wizards with strong strength and strong mental power can also appropriately reduce some magic release factors through their proficient casting skills. For example, the magic wand and magic spell, which is often called wandless casting and silent casting. However, there are two key factors that are absolutely unavoidable, that is, the coordination of mental power and magic power. So normally, a wizard can only cast one magic at the same time. But now, the magic prop in Turner's hand has changed this. This magic prop replaces the magic power in some key elements of casting spells with magic crystals. As for mental power, it is replaced by the magic inscriptions on it. As for spells and magic wands, they are all replaced. When these factors are met, a magic prop that can cast magic without relying on the wizard himself appears. Of course, a magic prop with such powerful functions is naturally not something Turner can make. What he has in his hand is just a simplified magic prop. It is still a long way to go for the magical prop mentioned above to appear. However, even with this simplified magic prop, he can also release some very simple magic. For example, Fireball. Of course, there is only one Fireball. This is the magic inscription of the Fireball spell, which was recorded in the basic elemental magic notebook, which allowed Turnus to make this prop. Otherwise, he would not have been able to complete it. But now, this magic prop can change the direction of this battle. I saw Turnus's hand gently pressing on the magic prop, and at the front of the magic prop, a horn-like end condensed a fireball only the size of an adult's fist out of thin air. The power of this fireball is equivalent to the power of a magic missile. But in such an environment and such a scene, it is the last straw to break the deadlock. After the fireball condensed, it flew forward in the direction pointed by the magic prop. This is another very bad point. Although this magic prop does not require mental coordination. But correspondingly, the flexibility of magic is lost. Although even the magic cast by the wizard cannot guarantee a 100% hit on the target, the mental power can only provide some very weak guidance. But it can also increase the hit rate of the spell to a certain extent. However, this magic prop can only move in a straight line in the direction indicated by the prop until the magic power is exhausted, it will dissipate, or it will directly explode when it hits other objects. At this moment, a small fireball has become the key to changing the situation. Perhaps, under normal circumstances, the damage of a fireball is not enough to have a big impact on an adult wizard. After all, no matter what, a normal person with wizard talent should be able to reach the level of an intermediate wizard after adulthood, and some people with better talents can reach the strength of a high-level magician. In the face of such strength, a small fireball, even if they do not use magic for defense, will have limited damage to them. The damage caused by magic is generally divided into two parts. One part comes from the damage bonus brought by the magic after it is formed. It is possible to see, such as the cutting of wind magic, paralysis and destruction of thunder magic, burning and explosion of fire magic, etc. There are also invisible ones, such as curses that weaken people's spirit and body, and corrosion and invasion of dark magic. The other part comes from the invasion of magic elements into the human body after the magic explodes, which is similar to invisible damage, constantly offsetting the magic energy in the body of the attacked, which can not only weaken the magic reserves of the attacked, but also cause further physical damage. And the magic energy contained in this small fireball is not much, to be honest, and after the magic is formed, the damage that can be caused is not much. However, this is also said in normal times, without other external interference. But is this the case with the Doric brothers now? No, on the contrary, Doric is now in a confrontation between magic and Tinas. In this case, the situation in his body is naturally imaginable. Every moment, the magic energy in his body is rapidly consumed. And you have to know that the magic released by Doric now is the most powerful and evil of the three unforgivable curses, the killing curse. The reason why this is called the unforgivable curse is not only because of its power, but also because it is the most famous black magic. The reason why it is called black magic is naturally because the release of this magic requires not only huge magic power, but also a very high mental concentration ability. If the requirements are not met, as black magic, the most famous thing is its danger, with a high possibility of backlash. And now, it is the threat of such a small fireball that makes Doric at a loss. In the end, should he resist the damage of this fireball, fight a bit, see if his luck will affect the continuous output of his killing curse. Or stop here, end the duration of the killing curse, and then find an opportunity to regain the advantage later. These two choices are obvious. In the end, Doric was still a little scared. As the head of black magic, the backlash of the killing curse is not a joke. If he is not careful, his life will be gone. Although he lost a certain advantage by retreating this time, he believed that he would be able to regain it in the next battle. After making a decision, Doric decisively stopped the release of the killing curse. At the same time, in order to prevent the subsequent damage of Turnus's water magic, he was also prepared to put on a protective spell, armor protection, at the moment of stopping the killing curse. But this time, things were not as simple as he thought. The water magic cast by Turnus actually did not have much magic output. This is just a low-level magic, and the damage of low-level magic can be imagined. But such a low-level magic with water attributes can withstand the attack of the killing curse. If it is placed in the magic world, this is indeed a bit incredible. A low-level magic can actually resist a very powerful black magic. However, in Turnus's view, this is indeed a very normal thing. Indeed, most of the time, the confrontation between magic depends on the size of the magic released by both sides and the strength of the magic. But here, Turnus took a trick. He used the impact of the water flow, mixed magic into the water flow, and brought the magic to the front of the killing curse through the high-speed flowing water. Through the continuous output of magic at a super high speed, he countered the concentrated but slow-flowing killing curse. This is a similar principle to the water knife in the Muggle world. Soft water, after reaching a certain amount, can cut any hard object. And now, Doric suddenly withdrew the release of the killing curse, leaving Turnus' water knife without an attack target. Then what happened next can be imagined. It can be called a water knife, and the magic that can counter the killing curse in a short time, you can imagine how fast the water flow in this water knife is. Just when Doric had just withdrawn the killing curse and cast the armor spell, the water knife had already appeared in front of him. Without giving him any reaction time, the water knife passed through Doric's body. It shot straight at the wall of the alley behind him. In order to avoid accidental injuries, although few people here are good people, he quickly retracted the water knife magic, but the contact in this moment made a deep dent in the stone bricks on the wall behind Doric. A rough look showed that it was at least 2 inches deep. After dealing with one of the Doric brothers, Turnus did not show mercy. He used another wind blade to take away the other man lying on the ground, who was still paralyzed. After that, Turnus stepped over the bodies of the 2 men, and with a light wave of the magic wand, all the valuable things on the 2 men floated out of their bodies. 2 magic wands, of course, needless to say. In addition to these, there are 2 leather bags, and no one knows what is in them. Turnus put them away directly, and then he ignored them and continued to walk out of Knockover Alley. Until Turnus' figure disappeared in the depths of the alley, the group of people who had just watched the show came out around him. Some poor and destitute black wizards came to their bodies very carefully and stripped off everything they thought was valuable. Then, 2 more people came out, carrying the bodies of the 2 men and walked to the side of the alley. These 2 people are specialized in dealing with corpses here, and they are also a group of people who use the corpses of the dead to make money. After a minute or two, this alley, except for some slight traces of the battle there is nothing else. The people around did not discuss or pay much attention to this. Although this situation cannot be said to happen every day here, it is also normal. Until this time, a figure slowly walked out of a dark corner. The body is hunched, and the face looks a little old. If Turnus is still here, he will definitely recognize that this is his big money, which made him a lot of money. What a pity, I thought I could save money, what 2 wastes, but it doesn't matter, this way, we can continue to cooperate in the future, it seems good. Talking to himself, Bo Jin slowly returned to his shop and continued to wipe his treasures. At the same time, he was also planning in his heart how to sell his treasures at a good price. Let's not talk about the scenes in Nocturne Alley for now, let's talk about Turnus. He had already walked out of Nocturne Alley. When he passed an empty alley, the disguise on his body was instantly put back into his space ring. The figure of the little boy who looked to be in his teens reappeared. Turnus didn't have much feeling about everything just now. He didn't feel disgusted by the killing just now, nor did he feel the sense of accomplishment of winning the battle. He had prepared for this day for a long time. Just to ensure that he would not have any adverse reactions due to killing, there were no less than 50 small animals dissected alive. After a lot of bloody training, although his mentality was still a little fluctuating, it was much better than that of ordinary people. Turnus didn't stay here for long, and his feet quickly returned to the scrap shop. As an industry of the Longbottom family, this place is still very large, and here, because of Turnus' special hobby, there is also a studio that belongs to him alone. After saying hello to the store manager, Turnus went straight to his workshop and closed the door. Then he took out the spoils of the 2 men from his arms. There was no need to take the wands, as there was nothing good about the 2 wands. The most important thing was the 2 leather bags. He took out the 2 leather bags and poured out all the contents of one of them. After hearing the jingling sounds, a pile of gold galleons, silver sickles and copper nuts were poured out. Apart from the money, there was nothing else, which made Turnus a little disappointed. What a poor guy. After complaining, Turnus put all the money on the ground into his space ring. In fact, this leather bag is not poor. There are thousands of gold galleons in this bag alone. However, for Turnus, who just got 180,000 gold coins, the value of these things is really limited. It is not as valuable as a magic prop with some functions. Of course, in addition to these gold coins, this leather bag is also of some value. It is a leather bag with a solidified traceless extension spell. The space inside is quite good, as big as a large suitcase. It can be used later. As he said, Turnus put this leather bag and the dragon leather bag he got from Borgin into the space ring. Although the traceless extension spell in this world looks very similar to space magic, it also has certain space properties. However, strictly speaking, this is not a space magic, but more like a shrinking spell. Turnus also thought that these pockets can be put into his space ring. I don't know if it's because the magic of the two worlds is different, or what. However, as far as Turnus knows, it seems that the two space rings cannot be stored in each other. Turnus set his sights on the last leather bag. He turned the bag upside down and began to pour things out. At the beginning, a pile of gold coins also poured out of the pocket. This time, the number of gold coins was less than the last time, only more than 300 gold galleons, and there were not many other coins. After all the money was poured out, Turnus saw that some other things were poured out from this pocket. At first, it was just some jewelry that was not very good before. This made Turnus very disappointed. But soon, he was no longer disappointed, because, from this pocket, something was finally poured out. For this kind of thing, Turnus just took a quick look and roughly judged the value of this thing. From the perspective of magic fluctuations, its magic power is not very strong. However, looking at its exquisite appearance and gorgeous decorations, it shows that it is not ordinary. After all, ordinary magic props will not spend so much trouble to decorate and dress up. Turnus collected all the other things, including those that could be used and those that could not be used, to see if he could be lucky once. Finally, he took the last magic item and looked at it carefully. He did not open the jewelry box-like magic item rashly. Instead, he kept looking at its appearance and used magic power to sense the magic fluctuations on it. Although this did not allow him to get too much information, he could at least know whether there was any magic such as evil spells on this magic equipment. After a period of observation and speculation, Turnus put down the magic prop with some disappointment. Although this thing has a certain amount of magic fluctuations, it is not as strong as he imagined, and judging from the situation, it should not be a black magic prop. He put the jewelry box prop on his workbench and turned on the recording function on the exploration goggles. Although technological items sometimes cause some interference in this place full of magic, at least some data can be recorded, so it is better to turn it on. Then, Turnus picked up his pine wood wand and pointed the tip of the wand at the jewelry box in front of him. As the magic slowly penetrated, the magic on the jewelry box was also activated. Slowly, the jewelry box on the table began to emit some very special magic fluctuations. In Turnus' perception, this kind of magic fluctuation has no practical effect. It just plays a cleaning role, and it was not until this time that Turnus gave up further exploration of it. Because it was completely unnecessary, because this was just a very simple jewelry box, but it had a function to clean jewelry. Turnus was a little disappointed about this. He had originally thought that this jewelry box could appear in the hands of two dark wizards, and it should be a very useful magic prop, but he didn't expect it to be this thing. In fact, what Turnus didn't know was that the two brothers Doric had just stolen it from the residence of a wizard family with a long history. For a wizard family that is not a pure-blood family, it can be imagined that their family background is not as deep as he imagined. After searching the inside, only some not-so-good things were found. And this is the only magic prop that the two brothers have not dealt with. Turnus put the jewelry box aside, put away the wand, and walked out of the room. Leo, has the store received anything recently? When he came outside, Turnus asked about the situation in the store. And Leo is the person in charge of this store. He is a distant relative of the Longbottom family. His father is a Muggle and his mother has the blood of the Longbottom family. He also became a wizard. After graduation, he was arranged by the Longbottom family to come here. Perhaps in the past, the industry of this store was not favored by the Longbottom family. And Leo's status in the Longbottom family seemed insignificant. However, since the incident of Turner's, the status of this store has been highlighted. In any case, Turner's will be the next heir of the Longbottom family. The Longbottom interest group will naturally focus on some of Turner's concerns. This also made Leo, who was originally not valued, become an important figure in the family. He also knew who brought all this to him, so he worked harder here. At the same time, he also tried very hard to understand Turner's hobbies. So he knew very well what Turner's needed. Very respectfully, Leo bowed slightly and then said, "Master Tinas, I have sorted out all the items with magical fluctuations during this period of time. They are in warehouse number 1 at the back. However, there are not many items, only 32. 3 of them seem to be black magic props. I collected them because they were damaged. Master, do you need me to take you there?" He knew that Turna's temper was definitely not necessary, and the master would not care about those empty formalities, but he still asked. Sure enough, Turnas shook his head and refused. "I'll go take a look first, you do your thing," Turnas said, and walked to the back of the store. After working in the backyard for more than 2 hours, Neville came to Turnas with a toad in his hand. Looking at the pet in Neville's hand, Turnas felt a buzzing feeling in his head. He didn't understand why Neville was fighting with a toad. "Turners, look, this is my pet, a toad with the bloodline of invisible beasts, isn't it amazing?" Neville said, and foolishly brought the toad to his eyes, and kissed the toad lightly with joy. Such an action made Turnas on the side feel a chill. "You can even do this." Neville heard what Turnas said, and raised his head in confusion, looking at him in confusion, not knowing what he meant. "Don't you think it's a bit disgusting to kiss a toad?" Turnas was speechless. What kind of hobby is this? Looking at Turnas, who seemed a little crazy, Neville shook his head embarrassedly and said shyly, "It's okay, Leaf is very cute." Question mark question mark question mark. Turnas was facing countless questions at this time, and his 3 views were completely ruined. Turnas grabbed Neville in a bad mood and walked out. He had almost seen all the magic items here. They were just some magic props with some damage. Some of them could be repaired or had a certain value, and Turnas collected them. As for the rest, they could only be recycled. He took Neville to the front desk of the scrap shop, where the Algae couple had already come here and were getting to know each other with Leo. They also knew some of their son's hobbies, although they thought it was a bit low class. However, since their son liked it, they didn't say anything more. They just hoped that when he turned 11 and went to Hogwarts school, he could concentrate on studying and pay more attention to studying. "Mom, why did you buy such a pet for Neville? This is really too." But before Turnas finished speaking, Annie interrupted him. "Tenaz, you should respect other people's decisions. This pet is what Neville likes. So no matter what, we should support him instead of denying his decision." This time, Annie spoke to Turnas in a very serious tone. This was rare in the past, because Turnas had been very sensible and well-behaved since he was a child, and he was very respectful to others, but this time, it seemed a bit too prejudiced. After hearing Annie's words, Turnas's original somewhat impetuous movements stopped in place, and the words he wanted to say were stuck in his throat and couldn't be said. Yes, maybe it was a habit from childhood, he always thought Neville was a child who needed his care. It was nothing before, but this time, he was indeed a little prescient in choosing a pet. In his cognition, he has always been impressed by one thing. At the beginning, Neville's search for his toad Leaf definitely occupied a large part of the novel and movie at the beginning. This made his impression of Leaf stay on one word, that is, trouble. Therefore, when facing Leaf, he always brought himself into it. In his cognition, Leaf was not Neville's best pet. However, it was precisely this idea that made him ignore one thing, that is, Neville's own wishes. After all, this pet belongs to Neville, and only he can decide whether this pet is suitable for him. After understanding this, Turns turned around a little embarrassedly, looked at Neville with a little apology and said, "I'm sorry, Neville, I didn't take your feelings into consideration, I'm sorry for that." Neville was a little overwhelmed by this. From childhood to adulthood, he has always taken Turns as an example, thinking that Turns is the most perfect person, everything he does is right, and he never makes mistakes. However, he did not expect that such a person would apologize to him at this time. This made him a little uncomfortable for a while, and he didn't know what to do next. Annie was very satisfied with her son's performance. From childhood to adulthood, Turns was very smart and sensible. He never let them down, but it was precisely because of this that she, as a parent, was very helpless. Sometimes, she, including Algie and Augusta, were a little at a loss. As a parent, what you have to do is to teach your children and let them take the most correct path. However, Turns' performance from childhood to adulthood did not give them any opportunity to perform, which made them think that their existence was redundant. Unexpectedly, today, she did complete a teaching for her child. This made Annie feel very proud, and this was a precedent in their family. Didn't you see that Algie on the side was looking at her with envy? This was the first time she felt the experience of being a parent in Turnes. Before this, if they wanted to have such a feeling, they could only find a sense of existence in Neville. This was the first time she felt it in Turnes. After getting Neville's forgiveness, Turnes turned around and happened to see his mother's somewhat smug expression. After a little thought, he understood something and rolled his eyes and ignored the two. Instead, he came to the counter by himself and threw 3 gold galleons on the table. These were the costs of the magic props he took away and had a certain value. Leo swept the 3 gold galleons into the drawer. This was already a routine, and he was also familiar with it. By the way, Mom, have you bought Neville's wand? Thinking of something, Turnes asked about this matter. As a wizard, the wand is their most important partner, so this matter still needs to be taken seriously. However, Turnes has some different ideas about this matter. It is well known that when wizards awaken their wizard talents in childhood, during that period of time, even without a wand, young wizards can use some very magical means. At this time, the magical means they use are neither assisted by a wand nor promoted by a spell. Does this look very familiar? Yes, it is very similar to the wandless and spellless spellcasting that adult wizards yearn for. Even if they can only do some very simple things, without the powerful magic when casting with a wand, and without the specific effect when casting with a spell. But they still completed the wandless and spellless spellcasting, which is undeniable. So, Turnes was thinking, why not contact the control of magic power during this period of time? In this way, even if what can be done is very limited and very single. But as long as you remember this feeling, it will be much better to cast spells without a wand and spells in the future than to practice again and start from scratch. Therefore, Turnes's idea now is to let Neville not have his own wand too early, and wait until he can remember the feeling of controlling magic without any assistance, and then slowly start to contact the wand. In fact, Turnes has been deliberately training himself since he was 5 years old, the feeling of being able to make his wishes come true when the magic power has just awakened. He has been training this feeling all the time. Although the effect is not as magical as imagined, it is impossible to say that there is no effect. Although Algie was a little curious about why Turnes asked this, he still said, "Not yet. We think that after a while. After all, Neville has just awakened magic and needs a period of adaptation. After adapting, giving him a wand will help suppress the possible riot of magic." Turnes nodded and said nothing more, and this place is not the place to say more. Even if he wants to say his thoughts, he will return to Longbottom Manor. So, do we need to buy anything else? If not, then let's go back. Annie asked Turnes, wanting to see if he needed anything else. Turnes shook his head. The purpose of coming here this time had been achieved, and he didn't need anything. Although he now had more than 180,000 gold galleons, it was still impossible for him to spend money in Diagon Alley with his current status, because there was no way to explain the source of gold galleons. Then let's go back. It's just in time for dinner. Let's see what kind of oriental food Carrie prepared for us. I'm drooling just thinking about it. Algie said with some anticipation. Ever since his son clamored for oriental food, and since they came into contact with oriental food, everyone in Longbottom Manor has become obsessed with such food. After thinking of so many delicious dishes, even Neville, who still wanted to go out and play, gave up. Compared to food, playing is always possible. After returning to the manor, As expected, the dining table was already filled with all kinds of delicious food, including kung pao chicken, beef stew with potatoes, and various sushi and sashimi, which made people drool just by looking at them. Terns and Neville couldn't wait to sit at the table, waiting for dinner. During the meal, Grandma Asta also heard that Terns made a mistake for the first time today, which made her eyes light up. This was the first time for her grandson. Although the matter had passed, the old man still used this as an excuse to say a few words to Terns, which was considered to be a mouthful. This made Terns a little helpless. While he was laughing in his heart, he felt a little warm. This was the feeling of home. After dinner, the family sat in the hall, chatting about some family matters together, and also appreciating Neville's new pet. Well, it was not appreciation at all. At least Terns couldn't see what was so good about a toad. It was also through this opportunity that Terns expressed his thoughts. In order to prove all this, he also used himself as an example. Look, light. Only a sound was heard from Terns' mouth, and then a ball of light emitting milky white light appeared in his hand. This light ball is no different from the previous one. If anything, it is more stable. At the same time, the magic power inside is more abundant. Although it has no lethality, it can also be prevented from being easily disturbed by other magic or something else. Looking at the means used by Turners, the three adults in the family were a little surprised, and they gradually began to confirm Turners' idea. Because, with Turners' confirmation, this is already a fact. Moreover, if they think about it carefully, they also think that it makes sense to say so, because when they were young, they also had such an experience. When they didn't get any spells and magic power, they could use magic power to do something, no matter how magical it was. However, since they got the wand and spell, they seemed to have locked themselves in a cage, and could only do some things according to the routine, and no longer had the freedom of childhood. After that, Turners made another move, and he put his hands together and put them in front of his chest. In the perception of others, a large amount of magic power was condensed on Turners' hands, and this magic power was wrapped around his hands. Others didn't know what Turners was doing, and they could only watch. Soon, Turners' palms began to separate, and it was seen that on his hands, as his palms separated, between his hands, every two corresponding fingers were connected with a very obvious magic thread. As the palms separated, these 5 threads became more obvious. Because the magic power and the air were in contact with each other, some reactions occurred between the two. The magic power was constantly evaporating, and the air also produced obvious fluctuations due to the evaporation of the magic power. As his hands continued to stretch away, the 5 magic threads in Turners' hands continued to extend. Until a certain moment, Turners suddenly clenched his hands, and the magic threads on his fingers condensed together. It was no longer 5 relatively thin magic threads, but condensed into a thicker magic thread. No, it could no longer be called a magic thread, but a magic whip. Turners loosened his left hand and continued to hold his right hand. He seemed to be holding a whip in his hand and swung it towards the chair beside him. With a bang, the chair broke into pieces under Turners' attack. And on the wooden floor, there was a mark of being whipped by magic. Seeing Turners suddenly launch such a powerful attack, Algie and the other 3 were very shocked. They did not expect that they would come into contact with magic 3 years ago. Until now, Turners has been able to perform such attacks without any external force, whether it is a spell or a wand. They did not have any emotions about Turners' aggressiveness. As adults, they understand the cruelty of the magic world best. That is, their children are still young now. When they grow up, they will definitely teach them some less powerful evil spells and offensive spells, not to mention the 3 unforgivable curses. This is absolute. Only after understanding the true face of the magic world will you understand that a big fist means you can have everything you want. However, through this performance, they also found that Turner's wizard talent is very high, and the magic power in his body should not be underestimated. At least it has reached the level of a wizard apprentice. Such a talent makes them very happy. After all, if a powerful wizard can appear in the Longbottom family, it will be very good news for the whole family. If there is a person like Dumbledore and Voldemort, then the Longbottom family will be expected to become the strongest wizard family in the magic world. The reason why Dumbledore and the other two were not able to become such a person is because of various coincidences, which led to problems in the entire family. However, it is undeniable that their strong strength has made their power no longer limited to their own strength, but more of the obedience of the people around them. Powerful wizards never lack some followers, which is the fundamental reason for their strength. Just like Voldemort, he is indeed powerful, but no matter how strong he is, he can only fight 10 Aurors on equal terms. What if there are 20, 30, or even 50 or 100? He still has to kneel. However, why was he able to dominate the magic world at that time? It was because his followers gathered a huge force around him, which made the entire magic world tremble. This is the real reason for his strength. And now, with the support of the entire Longbottom family, if Turners can grow up, not to mention reaching the level of Dumbledore, even if it was just Professor McGonagall or Snape and others, they could gather a very powerful force. This gave them hope for the rise of the Longbottom family. This is the first time that I have felt such obvious hope since 8 years ago. 8 years ago, the Longbottom family was also very powerful. At that time, not only Algy was in the Auror Corps of the Ministry of Magic, but also Neville's parents, Frank and Alice, and Annie, who also held an important position in the Ministry of Magic. Such a force is very likely to have a place in the Ministry of Magic. Later, maybe Algy or Frank, with the support of the Longbottom family, may successfully become the important position of the director of the Auror office. Then it is possible to rise to a higher level and even become a candidate for the Minister of Magic in the future. However, since Neville was born 8 years ago, everything has changed. First, Frank and Alice, who were Aurors, were captured by Death Eaters and tortured crazy. Then because Dumbledore gave up the post of Minister of Magic, the Longbottom family, as a solid supporter of the Order of the Phoenix, was targeted by Fudge intentionally or unintentionally. As a result, the entire Longbottom family's power in the Ministry of Magic was affected. This also led to the Longbottom family, who have been much quieter in the entire magic world in recent years, just doing their own work quietly. However, it is different now. They have new hope. The strength of these parents has reached a bottleneck. It is basically impossible to improve again. However, their next generation has great potential. It was also from this day that Turner's education was raised to a higher level, and he was taught more comprehensively. Whether in terms of etiquette, dealing with people, or other things, even magic, they have begun to teach now. Of course, Turner's did not cancel what he could learn in school in advance, because there was no need. Most of them were some things that were basically not touched in school, or were relatively niche, and belonged to the private collection of the Longbottom family, and they began to be open to Turner's. This is Turner's. When he awakened his wizard talent, it was too early. He began to awaken his wizard talent as early as 5 years old. You know, even Neville began to awaken his wizard talent when he was 8 years old. This is also thanks to Turnus, who has strengthened Turnus intentionally or unintentionally. Although he may not be able to do much, the magic materials from other worlds are invested in Neville regardless of the cost. Neville has eaten a lot of monster meat and fruits containing magic power from other worlds. Under the nourishment of these magic powers, even if he can't absorb much by instinct alone, there is a certain effect. And Neville's talent is not bad. Indeed, his memory is not very good because of the forgetfulness spell, which makes him look a little stupid and not very smart. However, his talent is undoubtedly very strong. In this way, he also awakened his wizard talent when he was 8 years old, facing a life and death accident. It is conceivable that other people, even many children from wizard families, awaken their wizard talent after the age of 10. During that period of time, the child's body has developed very well, and he has a certain understanding of the things around him. When facing some emergencies, it is easy to have greater emotional fluctuations and awaken wizard talent. This makes Turnus far ahead of others by at least 3 years. Now that Turnus has stabilized his magic power, he can still learn some magic. Moreover, relying on his mental strength and cognition that exceed those of ordinary children, he will be a helper. When learning, he can also achieve twice the result with half the effort. Moreover, children's learning efficiency is the most powerful, not only because they will form an inertial thinking of what they have learned, but also because their brains are relatively immature during this period of time. It will not solidify the brain, and it will be easier to develop the brain. The more the brain is developed, the easier it is to accept knowledge. Turnus spent 3 long years in the intense and busy study. Today, 3 years later, it is time for Turnus and Neville to go to school. More than a month ago, Turnus and Neville had received an invitation letter from Hogwarts. The school supplies and books had been prepared by the 2 house elves, Neb and Carrie. And now, it is time for them to go to Hogwarts. Under the guidance of the elves, they only apparated and came to the 9 3/4 platform of King's Cross Station. At this time, many people have come here, most of them are here to send their children to school. Here, Turnus saw many familiar people, Draco's father Lucius, Draco's followers, the 2 strong boys Crabbe and Goyle, and Hermione and her parents. There are more people he is not familiar with, but it doesn't matter, they will know each other soon. Okay, boys, you're going to Hogwarts soon. When you get there, you have to study hard and don't be outdone by others. And take care of yourselves, okay? Annie was still a little uncomfortable with the sudden departure of her son and nephew. She was a little sad and kept nagging. I know, Mom, I will take good care of me and Neville and won't let us suffer any grievances. When we get there, I will write to you often. Don't worry, okay? Turnus said, although he was a little helpless. In this regard, Algy on the side was very satisfied. His son really had the style of his old age, very cool. Turnus naturally didn't know about his father's shamelessness, otherwise he would definitely roll his eyes at him. Neville was a little nervous, to be honest. This was the first time he had been away from home for such a long time. It was inevitable for a child to worry. Fortunately, with Turnus by his side, he did not seem so uneasy. But his right hand holding the dragon skin bag was clenched tightly, showing his inner restlessness. The bag in his hand was a space bag. The space inside was large enough to hold a lot of things. It was his suitcase. This was given to Neville by Turnus on his 11th birthday. He also had such a bag, but it was much smaller and the space inside was not very large. He had a space ring, and using that bag was just a pretense to cover up his tracks. Space equipment such as space rings seemed a little too shocking to appear in this world. Okay, Mom, the train is about to start, and you still need to go to work, so let's go first. We can do it, don't worry, okay? Turnus comforted his mother like a little adult, and then he was going to pull Neville on the train first. After all, as he said, the train was about to start, and they still needed to find a seat. Although Annie was very reluctant, she also understood that what her son said was indeed reasonable. In the end, she kissed Turnus and Neville on the forehead reluctantly, and left here with her husband. After seeing his parents leave, Turnus also took Neville to the Hogwarts Express. However, his parents' peculiar way of moving attracted the attention of people on the side. The fluffy long hair, although it was groomed and braided into a braid, still looked a little messy. The 2 big front teeth in the mouth looked like a rabbit. There were some freckles on the face, but it looked very cute. After seeing Turnus and Neville get on the train, she also said goodbye to her parents and chased after them. Soon, after Turnus and Neville found a compartment and sat in it, the little girl followed in very familiarly. After taking off the suitcase in her hand and coming in, she greeted in a somewhat embarrassed manner. Hello, I am a freshman this year, my name is Hermione, Hermione Granger, nice to meet you. After hearing the girl's self-introduction, Turnus was a little surprised, but he quickly sorted out his mood, greeted and introduced himself. Hello, I am Turnus, Turnus Longbottom, nice to meet you. Neville, who was standing aside, saw his cousin introduce himself, and also said, I am Neville, Neville Longbottom, nice to meet you. Turnus saw Hermione dragging the big suitcase in with some difficulty, but was a little overwhelmed because it was too big to put on the luggage rack, so he took the initiative to help. Let me do it. As he said, he took out his pine wand, waved it gently, and Hermione's bulky suitcase flew to the luggage rack. This is a very simple application of magic, not as easy as the levitation spell. Instead, he relied on his powerful magic to build a bridge and directly pulled it up. Seeing this, Hermione, who had never been exposed to magic and only learned some magic knowledge after receiving the notice, suddenly became interested. Hey, is this magic? And the one about your parents just now, they suddenly disappeared, is that also magic? Looking at Hermione's pretty face that was a little red because of excitement, Turnus was a little moved. But that's it, there's no future. He doesn't want to be regarded as a pervert, he is not a pervert. Although such a little loli is delicious, but if she is chopped, what can she do in the future? Of course, she can still be cultivated. Anyway, this little loli will not grow crooked in the future, she is a little loli with great potential. Well, this is not magic, it's just a simple application of magic. As for the way my parents moved before, it's a kind of magic, the disapparition charm, a very advanced kind of magic. When we are in the 6th and 7th grades, we will learn it for a fee. Do you know other magic? Did the descendants of you magical families start learning magic a long time ago? Does this mean that we, the wizards who were born in Muggles, are one step behind you in the beginning? After Turnus answered a question, Hermione started asking questions like a machine gun, as if there would never be an end to the questions. Just as Hermione finished asking, Neville interrupted, "Not really. Turnus is very smart, so he learned a lot of things. I am stupid, so from the age of 8 to now, I only know one magic." As Neville was talking, he suddenly felt something was wrong. He scratched his head and said a little dully, "Hey, where is my LeFou? Is he gone again? LeFou is flying over." Then, Neville skillfully caught a seemingly transparent object flying from the luggage rack on the side. However, in the process of rapid movement, because the surrounding environment changed too quickly, its existence was still revealed. That's it. My LeFou is a toad with the blood of an invisible beast. He often disappears. This is why I have to learn this spell. Thanks to Turnus, otherwise, I still can't learn it until now. Hermione was stunned by this magical scene. Okay, don't be surprised. You've seen that we, the children of wizard families, are not much ahead of you. We just know more about the common sense of the wizarding world than you. As he said that, Turnus reached out and pulled Hermione's chin back in a very intimate way. This action seemed a bit ambiguous, but since they were just kids, they just blushed at first, and then soon they started chatting excitedly again. In fact, in wizard families, every child awakens at around 10 years old, because at this time, the child's body has developed to the point where it can withstand the explosion of magic power, and the understanding of things has also been established to a certain extent. At this point in time, it is most likely to have emotional fluctuations, and it is the kind of very intense emotional fluctuations. It is at this time that wizards are most likely to awaken. Turnus looked into Hermione's eyes and said very carefully, "So, in fact, we have just awakened our wizard talents, plus the time to stabilize magic power. In fact, children from wizard families basically do not come into contact with the actual operation of magic before school. Even if there is, it is at most some basic knowledge about magic, that is, theory, and because it is a child, there is not much theory. The possibility that you know more about magic is almost negligible." After listening to Turnus's careful and serious explanation, Hermione's anxiety about the new exposure to the magic world suddenly relaxed, and she no longer felt the tension before. "If you say that, I'm relieved. I thought you had been exposed to magic since childhood, and you have reached a very high level of magic practice." Hermione patted her chest cutely, looking relieved. Turnus just thought it was cute. Neville, who was standing aside, did not interrupt Turnus when he explained, nor did he tell Hermione that Turnus had awakened his wizard talent when he was 5 years old. Then Turnus, what magic do you know now? I just saw that you seem to know a lot more than others. Although Neville didn't say much, Hermione was so smart that she could naturally perceive that Turnus seemed to be more special. She also determined that the situation Turnus mentioned before had nothing to do with him. However, she was smart and didn't delve into it. Instead, she took advantage of this rare opportunity to learn about magic from Turnus. Turnus pointed at himself in surprise and asked uncertainly, "Me? Yes, you should know some magic, after all, you are very skilled in controlling magic." Although she hid it quickly, Hermione's cunning eyes still couldn't escape Turnus's eyes. However, he didn't care and generously showed Hermione some small magic that she would not come into contact with in the next study, but was very practical. These magics are not difficult to learn, but they are very practical. Looking at the very practical small magics appearing on Turnus's pine wand, Hermione's eyes were about to burst with stars. The desire in her eyes was almost bursting out. Turnus naturally saw it, so he taught it to Hermione generously. He could use these magics, so he would not hide them, otherwise he would not use them. In this way, time passed quickly while Hermione was studying seriously. Before they knew it, it was already past 3 o'clock in the afternoon. At this time, it was actually past mealtime. But the two people who were immersed in learning and teaching ignored it. Neville on the side was not easy to disturb, but at this time, he could not help it. Even if he did not want to disturb, his stomach was out of his control and made a gurgling sound, expressing his protest. The two of them walked out of the study atmosphere at once and looked at the place where the sound came from. When they saw Neville's somewhat awkward smile, they both laughed unkindly. Well, it's getting late, let's eat something and change into Hogwarts uniforms. We're almost there, so we'd better prepare in advance. Turnus helped Neville out. Hermione said very considerately, well, that's good. When we get to school, can we continue to study like this? Her pitiful eyes made Turnus' bones soften. How could he not agree? Naturally, he agreed and nodded like a rattle. By the way, what food did you bring? I don't think you brought your gifts just now. Hermione asked curiously about her doubts. Our gifts are all in here. As he said that, he took out a dragon skin bag. The square leather bag, which was only the size of a palm, was made of very high-quality dragon skin. Not only does it have a very powerful magic containment effect, but it can also resist very strong magic without any problems. At the same time, it has very high resistance to flames and high temperatures. Looking at Hermione's somewhat puzzled eyes, Turnus opened the small leather bag and took out some lunch boxes from it. Inside were some dishes prepared by Carrie, from the east and the west. The only thing in common was that they were all very exquisite. Neville on the side did the same. He took out portions of food from a similar leather bag. Because of the heat preservation magic on it, it was still steaming at this time, which seemed particularly special. Hermione on the side, not knowing whether she was greedy or surprised, swallowed her saliva and looked very shocked. This thing is a common magic prop in the magic world. It is solidified with a traceless extension spell. It has a large space and can hold a lot of things. Turnus said, raising the leather bag in his hand. Hermione looked at the leather bag with some envy, and didn't say much, trying to shift her attention to the delicacies. However, Turnus still saw Hermione's gaze, and would glance at the leather bag on his waist from time to time. Turnus knew it well, but didn't point it out immediately, but put the food in his hand on the table in the box and invited Hermione to eat together. Hermione and Turnus had been chatting for so long, and she was already very hungry. She just didn't pay attention here before, and now she saw the table full of delicacies, and her stomach began to growl immediately. Although it was a bit embarrassing, but they were already good friends, so naturally there was no need to be so polite, and they sat at the table and ate the delicacies together. After they were full, it was almost time, and it was time to get ready. Turnus and Neville were fine, but Hermione was a girl after all, so they still had to take care of her, so the two of them left the private room first, went outside, and asked Hermione to change into the Hogwarts school uniform. After leaving the private room, they did suddenly see a few people gathered in a private room outside. Two very tall and strong children, followed by a child with short light blonde hair, seemed to have some verbal dispute with the people inside. Seeing this, he almost knew who the person in the box was. It should be the Harry Potter who was known as the Savior. Just as Turnus and Neville were watching with some curiosity, the conflict between the two sides seemed to intensify. The person in the box seemed to be angry and wanted to rush up to have a real-life PK with Malfoy. However, he obviously underestimated the opponent's strength. Even if Draco's body was not very strong, the two followers behind him were not easy to deal with. That strong physique was not something his small physique could resist. Soon, the little boy with red hair was suppressed by Crabbe and Goyle. Turnus did not sit idly by, although when watching the Harry Potter movie, he also gnashed his teeth for Ronald's pursuit of Hermione. But at this time, he couldn't just watch it like this. Besides, Hermione was in the box and would come out soon. If she saw him in such a situation, he would sit idly by and watch the fun there. Although the impression of him would not be bad, it would not be good either. It would be better to take action now so that Hermione could see his great side. Towards the happy thing, Turners drew out his wand, left and right separated. This is a very magical spell, which can separate the two trembling parties, which can be regarded as a magic spell to persuade them to stop fighting. Under Turner's spell, Ronald and Harry, who had been suppressed, easily got rid of the suppression of Crabbe and Goyle. As for Draco, who had just been playing soy sauce, he was not affected by this spell and did not look so embarrassed. At the same time, he also saw who was interfering with their battle. Well, let's call it a battle. Who are you? Why are you interfering in my business? Although Draco was a little fierce, he was not too impulsive. At this time, the one who could stop them would definitely not be a simple character, and he was using magic. This made him wary. You know, even Draco didn't know how to use magic at this time. Even if he could, it was just some small acrobatics for fun. He could never separate the fighting people with a wave of the wand like just now. I'm Turnus Longbottom. You should be from the Malfoy family. This farce ends here. We're about to go to school. Go change your clothes. Turnus said very calmly, and at the same time, he put the wand in his hand back into the inner pocket of his clothes. Draco didn't expect that he would meet someone of the same age this time, and judging from the other party's methods, he was obviously stronger than himself. This surprised him a little, and at the same time, he put away his pride. He had heard a little about the Longbottom family. The other family might not be as good as theirs, but it was not bad. Now that he could no longer determine the enemy-friend relationship, he would not be so stupid as to make an enemy for himself. Turning back, Draco taunted Ronald with disdain. Red-haired poor guy, see you at school, and our savior, haha. The last, haha, was full of sarcasm. Before leaving, he glanced at Turns again, and then left here with the two followers. Turns walked up gracefully, looked at Harry and Ronald, and asked softly, "Are you okay?" When the two saw that it was the people who helped them, they naturally would not treat them coldly. They said with a red face, "We are fine, thank you for helping us just now." At this time, Harry was still very polite and peaceful. Ronald, who was standing by at that time, perhaps because of family grudges, didn't hate Turner's intervention, but he wasn't grateful either. He just said stubbornly, "Even without you, I can still knock Malfoy's teeth out." Harry pulled Ronald's clothes from behind, and said to Turner's apologetically, "Sorry, Ronald didn't mean that. He's just still angry with Malfoy. Don't take it to heart." With Harry's stop, Ronald didn't say anything more, but turned his head and stopped talking. At this time, Hermione, who was changing clothes in the front of the box, came out. She looked around curiously and asked, "What happened here just now?" Turners finally nodded to Harry as a greeting, then turned around and walked towards the box where Hermione was. After returning to the box with Neville, Turnus took out his school uniform and put it on. After tidying up his clothes, he explained, "Just now, two children from wizarding families had a conflict because of conflicts between families." "Oh, what's going on?" Hermione didn't know much about the current situation of the martial arts world, and asked curiously. Turnus explained to Hermione patiently, "I think you should know the specific situation of Hogwarts." Hermione raised her head proudly, and said with her chin slightly raised, "Of course, I have read the history of Hogwarts." "Then you should also know that although Hogwarts is a magic school, it is divided into 4 colleges inside." So what?" Hermione raised her hand slightly, motioning him to continue. "These 4 houses are Gryffindor, Slytherin, Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff. Among these 4 houses, Gryffindor and Slytherin have long had irreconcilable conflicts, and the competition between the students of both sides has never stopped." "But, what does this have to do with the previous conflict?" Hermione was still confused and didn't know what the connection was. "Because, in Hogwarts, there are many children from pure-blood wizard families. These families are like the nobles in the Muggle world, with deep grievances and entanglements. I don't know since when, even the school has become one of their battlefields." "Is that so? Don't the teachers in the school care about it?" Hermione's face was a little pale. Regarding the battlefield, Hermione obviously thought of something wrong. "Well, the battle is not that cruel. It's just a competition between 2 children. However, there are only 2 groups of children from 2 colleges in the academy. There is no need to interfere. Such competition is more conducive to students' learning progress." Hermione rolled her eyes very cutely, as if she was asking why you didn't explain it clearly. In this regard, although Turnus was laughing in his heart, he remained calm and continued, the most intense struggle is between Gryffindor and Slytherin. In Gryffindor, there is a group of children from pure-blood families. The philosophy of their entire family is to live in harmony with Muggles. They don't look at Muggle-born wizards with any prejudice. This sentence aroused Hermione's favor. After all, she herself was born into a Muggle wizard family. Such a college would naturally be more likely to win her favor. But, you know, wherever there are people, there will always be some guys who think they are superior. These people discriminate against those wizards of Muggle origin, and think that they are not worthy of the inheritance of magic. Almost all wizards with this kind of thinking gather in Slytherin. Turnus finally spread his hands and explained helplessly, this is the difference in ideas between the two colleges, which eventually evolved into a contest between two students, who disliked each other. After hearing Turner's explanation, Hermione understood the root cause of the conflict just now. However, after understanding everything, Hermione had new concerns. She herself was a wizard of Muggle origin, and the two people in front of her were undoubtedly children from pure-blood families. Then, the relationship between them needs to be seriously considered. Although at present, there is no problem in their getting along, and they have always been very happy, so happy that she has regarded the boy in front of her as her best friend. However, if the boy's family was from Slytherin, then there was no doubt that even if they had a harmonious relationship now, she could already imagine the final result. Looking at Hermione's slightly worried eyes, Turnus had no idea what she was thinking. Well, don't worry. The Longbottom family that Neville and I came from has always been from Hogwarts. Although there have been Slytherin students, it was only because of pure blood, not because of the same philosophy. Although some Slytherin students are grouped together because of some ideological issues, some do not care about blood and are only grouped in because of their pure blood status. So don't think that all Slytherin people are idiots. Well, I know. Hermione nodded very seriously, looking very cute. In fact, in the entire Hogwarts, even the most exclusive college for Muggle-born wizards, not everyone agrees with this. Instead, Muggle-born students occupy a very important part. Thanks for watching, please subscribe and support our channel.